This is Adam Graham from Pretty Much the Present, bringing you a week of old-time radio podcasts. These episodes were originally released back in 2011, and we're releasing them here pretty much as is, with only some extraneous bits such as the opening from all of the episodes after the first episode removed. Because these are old, it should be noted that any offers or promotions mentioned in the episode may not be valid unless they're currently mentioned on the Great Detectives website. Here now is a week of old-time radio detective podcast. Welcome to the Great Detectives of Old Time Radio. From Boise, Idaho, this is your host, Adam Graham. If you have a comment, please send it to me, box13@greatdetectives.net. Be sure to cast your vote for the show on Podcast Alley, podcastalley.greatdetectives.net, and become one of our friends on Facebook, facebook.com/Radio Detectives. Well, before we get started with today's episode of The Adventures of the Abbotts, I do want to encourage you to check out my wife and I's book, Tales of the Dim Night. It's a great superhero comedy with a solid family story. We pay homage to a lot of the great classic superheroes, and I think you'll enjoy it. You can check it out at dimnight.com, get information on where it can be purchased, as well as be able to read excerpts, reviews, interviews, and all the rest. It's at dimnight, dimknight.com. Well, now it's time for today's adventure with Pat and Jean Abbott. The Clue of the Ivory Thread.
After all, a $250,000 robbery and a few murders might not bother you. But when your favorite perfume doesn't put your husband in a romantic mood, wouldn't you be furious?
The National Broadcasting Company presents The Adventures of the Abbotts, starring Claudia Morgan and Les Damon as Pat and Jean Abbott, those popular characters of detective fiction. NBC invites you to join Pat and Jean each week at this time for another recorded adventure in romance and crime. Tonight's story, The Clue of the Ivory Thread. And here is Jean Abbott to set the stage for tonight's puzzle in murder.
We were in Pat's office in San Francisco. I'd just spent a fabulous amount of money on a bottle of perfume, and, well, like any smart wife, I was going to break it to my husband gently. Pat?
Mm-hmm.
You like my perfume?
Yeah, it's all right.
Well, now, isn't that a romantic answer? The ad said, "This delicate fragrance will make your loved one float on an enchanted cloud."
Oh.
I'm going to ask for my money back. I'm going right to the store and say, my husband did not float.
How much was this gookum?
Gookum? Pat Abbott, this just happens to be Prince Michael's Essence of Gardenia, the most famous, rare, exotic perfume in the world.
Mm-hmm. How much was this gookum?
$40 a half ounce.
Holy Aunt Hannah.
Oh, don't scold me, Pat. Come here, darling. Close to me. Smell it now. But doesn't it have an effect on you?
Well, now that you mention it, Mrs. Abbott.
Oh, curses spoiled again.
Come in.
Mr. Abbott?
Yes?
Might I see you alone for a moment?
Why, sure. Would you wait in the other room, Jean?
Oh, that isn't necessary, Pat. How do you do? I'm Mrs. Abbott, and I often work with my husband on his cases, so you can go right ahead.
Would you wait in the other room, Jean?
Well, he doesn't have any secrets from me, and so... Oh, all right, Pat. Don't glare.
Sit down, Mr.
Call me John Smith.
Well, now, that isn't a very impressive beginning, is it? If a client hasn't enough confidence in me to tell me his real name...
I have confidence in you. I'm checked up on you. They tell me you're one of the best private detectives in America. I need someone like that, someone very resourceful.
What's on your mind?
Take this envelope. Open it. No. Don't bother counting. 10,000. There's 10,000 in cash in it. It's yours.
If I do what?
You must help me see someone.
Who do you want to see?
A woman named Eloisa Fernandez.
Eloisa Fernandez?
It may be a little difficult for you to arrange for me to see Miss Fernandez.
Why?
She's dead.
You kill her?
No.
Where's the body?
Buried in a cemetery about 45 miles from here.
Oh, sorry, I don't go for body snatching.
Do you go for $10,000?
Here, take it back. I also don't like cases where I don't know my client's real name. Why do you want this woman's body?
Part of our agreement would be that you're not to ask any questions.
Well, I don't go for that either. This deal won't wash, pal.
It would take a long, long time for you to earn $10,000 as a private detective, Mr. Abbott. You'd have to find a great many lost puppies and husbands with convenient amnesia to earn that much. This wouldn't take more than one night. I need the help, Mr. Abbott. I'm rather clumsy, and you're self-assured. You wouldn't become panicky.
Mm-hmm.
When I came in, Mr. Abbott, I smelled your wife's perfume in the room. It's superb. She has very expensive taste. Now, I'm offering you $10,000 cash, Mr. Abbott, free of taxes, of course. I'd never report it. And I'd advise you not to.
Get out, John Smith or John Doe
I have
whatever.
a very fast car, Mr. Abbott. We could be at the cemetery in less than an hour.
I said get out. You complimented me. You mentioned some of my attributes, but you forgot to mention one. I'm pretty good at throwing people downstairs.
What, Mr. Abbott?
Good afternoon, Mr. Smith.
It would certainly be childish.
Get out of here.
My son, I'm proud of you.
Oh, shut up.
Tain't easy to turn down 10 big ones.
Were you at that keyhole again?
Pat, what do you suppose he wants with that body?
I think
Yes?
it's his wife's body.
Go on.
He murdered her
Yes?
because she bought some fancy perfume for $40 a half ounce.
That's not funny.
Oh, that's our friend the ghoul again. Now, come in.
Mr. Abbott?
Yes?
I'm Dr. Frederick Hayes of the Psychiatric Institute.
Oh, sit down, Doctor. Jean.
I'm going.
Doctor, what can I do for you?
I mind.
Oh, really?
Short, stocky, very intense, black hair, extremely pale, anemic complexion. Probably didn't give you his name.
He just left.
His name is Philip Clark. Now, we physicians often find ourselves in a difficult ethical dilemma, Mr. Abbott. When do we violate our oath and discuss patients with the public? Now, presume a patient is a railroad engineer or an aeroplane pilot. Presume he's anxious, guilt-ridden, his behavior most unpredictable. Does the doctor violate the medical code and report this? Now, I think he's obliged to. Now, I am forced to tell you about Clark. He is what we term a paranoiac. He has systematized delusions.
He's seeing things, you mean?
Precisely. Did he give you the story about the dead body?
He did.
Now, there actually is a woman named Eloisa Fernandez buried some miles from here. She has no connection with Clark. I imagine he heard the name somewhere or read it in a newspaper. He imagines that she calls him and begs him to free her from the grave. Characteristic morbid obsession. Now, I'm afraid we shall have to hospitalize him permanently.
Well, is there anything I can do, Doctor?
No, thank you. I'm sorry if he gave you a rather gruesome time. Just thought I'd acquaint you with the facts. He offer you money?
Yes, $10,000 in cash.
It was genuine, Mr. Abbott. He's extremely wealthy. Oh, there's no necessity for calling the police. It would just embarrass everyone. This won't happen again, I assure you. We've allowed him a shade too much freedom.
Has he any family or friends?
No. He's led a very, very secluded life. In a curious house he owns on Palmer Road below Carmel.
I see. Well, thank you for coming, Doctor.
Yes, I've violated my professional confidence, but I feel for well-justified reasons. I'm sure you won't discuss this with anyone. Good afternoon.
Goodbye, Doctor. You can come in now, dear.
So, our body-snatching friend is named Philip Clark.
Yeah.
I know you, Mr. Abbott. That expression on your face. You're fitting pieces of a puzzle together.
There a good double feature in the neighborhood?
A whopper.
Fine. I'll buy you a big jelly apple and a bag of popcorn. You can go to the movies tonight and live it up.
Oh, while you go sticking your nose into this case.
I'm just going to wander around, that's all.
Say, for instance, to Clark's house on Palmer Road.
Say, for instance, something like that.
What time do we leave?
Me, not you.
Pat, if you don't take me with you, I'll go alone. I'll sneak out of the movies and follow you. Besides, who goes to romantic movies and sits in the dark alone? How square can you get?
Oh, I was afraid of this.
Come on, dear, let's pay a visit to Mr. Clark.
You sure you want to go? He might not be lonesome anymore.
What do you mean?
Well, maybe he dug up company for himself.
That night we drove to Palmer Road. It was across the Bay Bridge and down 101 to a section of Spanish villas clustered on a cliff by the Pacific. You had to swerve sharply off the highway and climb small, winding roads up the cliff. Occasionally, you'd see a hitchhiker, a Spanish farm worker. The weather was awful. The desolation was worse. Pat parked the car in the driveway on Palmer Road. It was a strange house that had evidently been redecorated, but the attempt to brighten it up was half-hearted and sort of neurotic. We stood on the porch and rang the bell. Nobody's home.
Ring again.
You want to try the door?
I will.
It's open.
Wait.
I want that dress.
Yes, I think.
Where it is. No,
Pat.
I don't know where that dress.
Sounds like a big row upstairs.
Let's sneak in.
Give me that dress.
Easy. Careful now. Close the door.
Now we... There's Mr. Clark at the top of the stairs. Hello, Mr. Clark. How are you?
Abbott.
Pat! Pat, there's a knife in his back.
Yes, and the man who put it there is behind him in the shadows, see? Stay where you are.
Stop it, Pat. He's running.
I'll get him. I'm going up the stairs.
Look out, Pat!
Get over here, Gene. The body will hit you.
Philip Clark, with a knife in his back, fell down the stairway of his home. His body landed less than a foot from where I stood with Pat. The few seconds Pat lost while he grabbed me and sidestepped the body cost us the killer. By the time Pat had raced upstairs and the killer had reached the roof, crossed over to another house, then he disappeared. Pat, exhausted by the chase, came back to where I stood by Clark's body.
Well, I got a good look at the murderer, Gene. I'll know him if I see him again. He's an ugly little runt.
Darling, what have you got in your hand?
Huh? Oh, it's a dress. A knife-throwing friend dropped it. He didn't dare stop and pick it up. I think that's why he came to visit the late Mr. Clark.
Just to get a dress?
Well, maybe.
Well, let's see it, dear. Hold it up. Oh, Pat, it's fascinating. Look at the embroidery on it. Have you ever seen such work? Look at how they've woven all these complicated designs. Sort of Spanish-looking, isn't it?
Yes. Yes, it is. Well, come on. We'll call the police, then we're going home and play games on this dress.
Play games on it? What kind of games?
Tic-tac-toe.
Oh, Pat, a man kills another man to get hold of a dress, and then you take it home and play tic-tac-toe on it. You know, confidentially, Bub, maybe you ought to see that psychiatrist, too, When we got home, Pat gave me a pencil and paper, took some himself, and then laid out the dress.
Now, Gene, men don't kill each other over a dress, unless it's more than just a dress.
Yes, I know. I figured it out. You think the designs on it mean something.
It's possible. So you take your pencil and paper and trace the pattern of the green threads. I'll do the same thing with the blue ones.
It's like being back in kindergarten again. Okay, teacher, let's trace the pretty colors. Looks like the green threads don't mean a thing, Pat.
Well, the blues don't make sense either. All right, now you try the purple ones. I'll take the ivory threads.
The purple threads don't make any pattern either. Comes out kind of silly.
Uh-huh. And look at what I've got tracing the ivory thread.
Why, it's an arrow. And all those squares. Well, I'd say it looks like the plan of a building. You see, Pat, there'd be the windows, 2 stories. And the arrow's pointing to a sort of tower on top. Don't you think so?
Sure, that's it.
But what building? Where?
Well, we may find out soon. We'll be having a visitor.
Oh, who's coming?
The killer knows I picked up the dress. He knows my name. Clark said it just before he died. So, my friend will be back. Yes, we'll be having a visit soon from an ugly little rat who likes to dig knives into people.
Pat was wrong. Nothing happened that night. Nothing happened the next morning. So Pat left the house and headed for his office, and I went downstairs with him.
Now, just you stay home like a good girl. I'll handle whatever comes up.
All right. You can handle it all by yourself. I have to go to the grocer's anyway.
You mean you're actually going to stay out of this?
Mm-hmm. For a while. I'm going shopping.
I don't get it.
Well, I have to go shopping, that's all.
That's why you're wearing that awful blouse and skirt, I suppose. Thought you were going to throw them away.
Well, my nice dresses get soiled when I handle bundles, dear, so I save this.
Okay, goodbye.
Pat.
What?
Don't let anything happen to you.
Oh, why not? Little gunplay might be fun.
No, don't. I kind of like you, and who knows? This might blossom into a beautiful romance.
Hello.
Pat, I finished shopping. Did the ugly little runt show up at your office?
No signs here of anyone.
Well, I sent the food, Pat. I'm not going home. I'm going to the Papagayo room for lunch. I met Laura. You remember her?
The Papagayo room? Are you trying to drive me into bankruptcy, ma'am?
Oh, but darling, lunch there is sensational.
Oh, well.
Pat.
Yeah?
I love you anyway. Even if you are a nasty old miser.
Yeah. Goodbye, Mrs. Abbott.
Goodbye, Scrooge. Pat had a very quiet day and went home at 6. When he got there, I wasn't in. He'd just stretched that long, lanky body of his out on the couch when the doorbell rang.
Good evening, Mr. Abbott.
Oh, Dr. Hayes?
Mind if I sit down?
No.
I read in the morning papers that my friend, Mr. Clark, was done away with.
Did you?
It wasn't used to me, of course. I'd arranged it.
Uh-huh. What's your real name, pal?
Oh, it's Hayes. Frederick Hayes. Of course, I'm not a psychiatrist. You have a charming apartment.
Thank you.
Waiting for your wife, Mr. Abbott?
What's that got to do with it?
Well, I think your wife will be late, sir. Very late.
What are you driving at?
I've been obliged to detain her.
You what?
Try to keep calm, sir. She's with a friend of mine. He has instructions that if anything goes amiss, he's to kill your wife.
Oh, you rotten punk.
Oh, it's very unfortunate, very. But I had no alternative. You have a dress here, Mr. Abbott. I want it. I knew you'd be reluctant to part with it, so I took the trouble of detaining your wife just after she left the Papagayo room. I thought this might persuade you to give me the dress.
It might.
I want it right now. You have an alluring wife, sir. I'd be very reluctant to see my associate use a knife on her.
I'll get the dress for you.
Excellent. It's an intriguing dress, you know. Dates back to the days when California was dominated by the Spanish. They demanded very heavy taxes from the population. at a mission in San Linda, just south of here. The fathers refused to comply. They took all of their treasure, in fact, all of the gold and valuable pieces in the town, and hid them in their mission. The Spanish, of course, were furious and ransacked the town. But they never found the treasure. A woman escaped from San Linda and made this dress.
With a map. Designed with the ivory threads telling exactly where the treasure could be found in the mission building.
Precisely. Mm-hmm. And quite a treasure it is, reportedly worth $250,000. There's a picturesque legend now. They say the bell in the mission will ring when the treasure is found. I intend to ring it, Mr. Abbott.
Yes, so I gathered. I think I can fill in the rest of the story. A woman named Eloisa Fernandez was buried in that dress very recently. Word got to Philip Clark. And to you. You're both...
Shall we say collectors of rare objets d'art?
Clark asked me to help dig up the body so he could get the dress. You knew what he was up to. So you posed as his psychiatrist so I keep my hands off. Then Clark got desperate that day and dug up the dress himself. He went home, and then a very ugly little associate of yours caught up with him.
Yes. Very careless he was, too. Dropping the dress. May I have it, please?
It's in this closet. What? Well, it was here last night.
I don't enjoy this kind of game, Mr. Abbott. Find that dress.
It was in this closet. I don't know where it could be.
I'm not impressed, Mr. Abbott. I don't believe you. But I'm going to be very generous. I shall give you a few hours to locate the dress. I shall return here at, say, midnight. If you don't give it to me then, well, my associate is so eager to use that knife on Mrs. Abbott, I won't be able to restrain him.
I'll expect you at midnight.
Good evening, Mr. Abbott. Always so pleasant to chat with you, sir.
When Mr. Hayes' hoodlum grabbed me, he blindfolded me. We drove quite a while. When they removed the blindfold, I was in a room that looked like those cells that friars used centuries ago. Religious pictures on the wall, bare table, prayer books, candlelight. An ugly little man who, I guess, was the character who killed Clark, sat in the room with me, watching me closely. He had an extra-large pocket knife, and he kept whittling on a small piece of wood. Couldn't you tell me why you brought me here? What's this all about?
I don't know nothing.
But you must...
Shut up!
Ah, Mrs. Abbott.
Dr. Hayes.
Sorry, I'm not really a physician. I'm just someone who's interested in finding that dress your husband has.
Oh, I see.
He was to give it to me tonight at 12 o'clock in your apartment. But I was just there. Your husband wasn't in. I'd warned him, too.
Warned him?
Yes, I told him if he didn't have the dress by midnight, we'd be obliged to kill you. That's why my friend has that knife.
Oh.
He's going to use it on you now.
Oh, no. No.
I shall step outside. The sight would be too offensive for me.
Oh.
I'll be back in a few minutes.
Yeah, go ahead, Hayes. Leave it to me.
Sorry it worked out this way, Mrs. Abbott. Very unfortunate. Very.
Come here, Mrs. Abbott.
No. No, no.
I got a nice sharp edge on this knife. I said, come here, Mrs. Abbott.
My arm! You break my arm!
Drop that knife.
Oh, Dad!
What the...
I said drop the knife.
Why,
Let
you...
go of her.
Oh, my shoulder!
He's out cold. Come on, Gene. Get out of here quietly.
Oh, Dad.
I'll close this door. Now drop the bolt. All right. Now, where is Hayes?
He was here a moment ago. I don't know where he is now. Oh, where are we, Pat? Did you bring the police? What?
We're at a mission. In San Linda. I couldn't bring the police there. It's too risky. Hayes might have killed you. The building looked deserted, but I'm sure he's around here somewhere.
Oh, this is the building designed on the dress.
That's right. And there's $250,000 in treasure here. Hayes is probably looking for it right now. No, shh. Come this way. Wait a minute. The arrow. It pointed to a tower. Sure. The bell tower. Maybe Hayes is poking around closer to the treasure than he thinks. I saw the bell tower on the way in. Through this archway. Come on now. Easy.
There he is, Pat. Up in the bell tower.
Stand aside where he can't see you. Come on down, Hayes.
Mr. Abbott?
Come down or I'll shoot you down.
Oh, you aren't the only one who has a gun, Mr. Abbott.
Pat, are you all right?
Didn't get anywhere near me. It's too dark. You can't see me very well down here. But I can see him. The moonlight up there helps. All right, now you'll come down the hard way, Hayes. I got him. He's staggering, see?
He's reaching for the bell rope to keep his balance.
Won't work. He's falling right down the rope.
Hayes, wounded, fell to the bottom of the bell tower, clutching at the rope all the way. And, as the legend had predicted, the mission bell at San Linda rang out, for the treasure was in the bell tower. Pat and I found it in the tower under the bricks surrounding the bell, just where the arrow and the dress had pointed. We turned it over to the church. It was sunrise by the time we were back in the lobby of our house. Pat, how'd you know I was in San Linda?
Well, the map on the dress showed a building, dear. When Hayes came to see me, he was so sure of himself, he spilled the whole story. He mentioned the mission at San Linda. I figured he'd take you there, where he could keep an eye on you in the building at the same time. Now, you have some explaining to do to me, dear.
Me?
Okay, if you want to stall. Take off your dress.
Pat Abbott. Here, in the lobby.
You heard me. Take off that dress right now.
Well, really, suggesting that your own wife do a striptease in the lobby.
Do you take it off yourself, or do I rip it off?
All right, dear, I give up.
You've got another dress on underneath this outfit, haven't you?
Mm-hmm. Well, how'd you know?
Well, when I found out the Spanish gown was missing from my guest closet, I knew you'd put it on. And put a loose-fitting outfit on over it.
Oh, wasn't it clever of me? I knew all sorts of people would be gunning for the dress, so I figured the best place to hide it was just to put it on. But how'd you know that I was wearing it?
Well, when we went out this morning, you had on this horrible blouse and skirt. Then you phoned and said you were going to the Papagayo room for lunch. You also said you hadn't been home. Now, Jean, dear, you'd never go to that swanky place in a terrible outfit like this without an extra special reason.
Wasn't it a good idea, Pat?
Oh, yes, very. Nearly got you killed. Say, are you wearing that goo-goo again? Prince Michael's essence of whatnot?
Pat, it's the finest perfume there is. $40 a half ounce.
And $80 an ounce. You trying to drive me into bankruptcy?
And doesn't it make you want to kiss me?
No. I'm always a pushover for that little idea.
Don't you like my perfume just a little bit, Pat?
It's okay.
I mean, when you kiss me and inhale it, don't you really go for it?
Oh, I suppose so. Yes.
I'm so glad.
Why, because it makes me romantic?
No. Because I bought 3 more bottles today. Moral of the story. Up until now, science thought it could create the biggest explosion in history by setting off an atomic bomb. But it's now possible to create an even bigger reaction. Just tell your husband you bought $120 worth of perfume.
The National Broadcasting Company has presented The Adventures of the Abbotts, starring Claudia Morgan and Les Damon as those popular personalities of detective fiction, Pat and Jean Abbott, created by Francis Crane. Tonight's cast included Joe DeSantis and John Ridgely. The Adventures of the Abbotts was written by Howard Merrill. Original music composed and conducted by Dewey Bergman. Produced by Ted Lloyd and Bernard L. Schubert. Directed and recorded by Harry Frazee. Now, this is Wayne Howell inviting you to join us next week, same time, same station, for another exciting adventure in crime with Pat and Jean in The Adventure of the Abbotts.
This is the United States Armed Forces Radio and Television Service.
Welcome back. One thing I have to note by observation here is that Jean Abbott's life is most endangered. Not when she goes on cases with Pat, but when Pat tells her to stay away for her own safety or so that she won't get in his way, excuse me. It may be better for all concerned, particularly for Jean, for him just to let her come along. Well, we now turn to listener feedback. I got an email from Doug Gordon. Said, I've been a listener for about 6 months, and I'm loving the podcast. I'm a licensed private investigator, and I love the old detective radio shows. Your podcast has given me the courage to start my own podcast, Real Detectives, about modern real-life detective work. His website for his investigation, it's secure-investigative.com. If you have iTunes, you just do a search for Real Detective, and podcasts are posted monthly. So thanks so much, and best of luck to you in getting that started, Doug. Got a donation from Chris, who's given before, just donated to you. I hope you can use it to keep your show going. Thank you for doing what you do. It is much appreciated. And also got a donation from LaDonna, who says, thanks for keeping me sane during the workday. And I will go ahead and send LaDonna access to our premium site, which we do for all donations of $7 or more. And Chris, of course, is already actually a premium member. Well, that will do it for today's episode. We'll be back tomorrow with Nero Wolfe. Before we get started with today's show, I do want to remind you about Audible. Audible is a great service that brings a world of great audiobooks to you. You can keep up on your professional or leisure reading, even if you don't have time to sit down and read because you're on the run. You can also enjoy great fiction, such as of course the Nero Wolfe novels. You can even select the book, The Black Orchids, which I mentioned just because of today's episode, through Audible, and you can get that free with your free trial. Go to audiblepodcast.com/oldtimeradio to start your free trial. Well, let's go ahead and we will get into today's episode of Nero Wolfe, The Case of the Phantom Fingers.
Ladies and gentlemen, the ringing of that phone bell means mystery, adventure.
Nero Wolfe's office, Archie Goodwin speaking. What? You're expecting Mr. Wolfe at your place in 3 hours? Your place is where? Yes. Well, I'm expecting Hedy Lamarr in 15 minutes. Yeah, but mister, we're both out of luck.
Archie, what are you babbling about?
There's a character on the phone who's laboring under the naive delusion that you're about to make a trip upstate.
His name?
Finley, he said.
In that case, he's quite correct.
Yeah, he's quite the, yes, Mr. Finley. Mr. Wolfe will be there. Yeah, goodbye.
I shall need some beer, Archie.
The bottle opener's in the right-hand drawer.
Thank you.
What one of us needs is a psychiatrist. You're voluntarily leaving your happy home, exposing yourself to the elements, entrusting your only life to a savage automobile?
I am.
Oh. Somebody's offered you the United States Treasury, huh?
Mr. Finley happens to grow orchids. Among them, he has developed a plant possessing spurred labilli, I have an opportunity to purchase a couple of the plants, therefore...
I don't believe it.
But, Archie, according to the reports I have received, he has produced a strain of black cypripedium.
Oh, well, in that case. But, Mr. Wolfe, while it's true that black may be the color of your true love's hair, it is also true that black is the color of funerals.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's the detective genius who rates the knife and fork the greatest tools ever invented by man. The ponderous, brilliant, and unpredictable Nero Wolfe. Created by Rex Stout and brought to you in the person of Mr. Sidney Greenstreet.
The beginning of the case of the Phantom Fingers actually had nothing to do with black orchids. The first act was played in an old house at the end of an old dirt road. It was short and simple. As short as life. And as simple as murder.
Joe, I didn't believe the letters I got. Didn't believe them until now. I've been a lonely man. No wife, children. Joe, it was all coming to you after I died. There was no need for you to steal from me. All you had to do was wait. Joe, that gun. Put it down. No.
Archie.
Yes, Mr. Wolfe.
How much longer?
Oh, an hour, maybe. Why?
I'm a fool.
Yeah, well, payday's tomorrow. I refuse to agree with you. Besides, the trip's been fine so far, huh? So there's snow on the road, but,
Phooey.
Well, it's nice snow. Pretty soon it'll be spring, and in the spring...
If you mention old Tidmas once more, I shall strangle you.
No, it's against the law. But you know, that snow melts much faster, the trees won't look so pretty.
Trees, are they really necessary?
Uh-huh. People cut them down and make paper out of them. And they take the paper and make dollar bills. Mr. Wolfe, we're surrounded by future thieves.
I prefer the finished product. What on earth is that?
Sounds like a river.
Indeed.
Except there aren't any rivers around here.
Hey.
Yeah?
Up ahead.
What? Huh?
It's a river. Only it isn't a river.
It's wet.
Yeah, it's wet and it's got waves on it. Had to start raining, too.
Nature. Phooey.
The road behind us is covered with water. We just have to keep going onward and upward.
Would you like to recite Excelsior to me?
Why, sure. Shades of night were falling fast when through an alpine village passed...
An idiot of your caliber, no doubt.
Oh.
That infernal engine has died.
No, the road dips up ahead. And where it dips, there's a junior Mississippi growing up.
Splendid.
Not so splendid. We can't go back and we can't go forward.
Why not?
They didn't build this model to swim.
No foresight. What do we do now?
Well, we could abandon the car and,
Walk, are you mad? Are you seriously suggesting I indulge in a foot race with the flood?
Yeah, well, not seriously, but,
Oh, you've decided to give the car a swimming lesson?
No. There's what looks like a cow path leading off the highway. To your right. Maybe it's a road.
We progress. We now follow the footstep of the cow.
Ah, it is a road. An old dirt road. Not only that, it goes up.
Is that good?
Theoretically. We might get above the water that way.
And if the theory fails?
Mr. Wolfe, how are you on the Australian crawl? Hey, there's been another car on this road before us. You can see the tire tracks in the mud.
Interesting. An indication that there are other maniacs about. I myself would not have chosen this particular spot to picnic in.
No, it's not that. There's somebody lying on the road.
People have peculiar habits. Ignore him and drive on.
Hold on a moment. Mr. Wolfe, you better come out here.
My madness has its limits. The answer is no. Serious, Archie?
Very serious.
Oh, very well. Good heavens.
Yeah, still alive, but...
The man's been shot. He's mumbling.
Joe.
Yelling for Joe.
Be still.
Don't forgive stealing. Don't.
So much for that. Pick him up, Archie. Put him in the car.
Might be bad for him to be moved.
No. There is nothing that can be bad for him. He's dead. Is this blasted road leading anywhere, Archie?
Well, seems to be a clearing up ahead. Maybe... Hey, it's a house.
Splendid.
I'm not so sure. It's perched up on top of a cliff, surrounded on three sides by nothing. On the side facing us, there's a deep ravine and a small wooden bridge.
An island in the air.
Yeah. High enough to keep above water, maybe, but... Now, that bridge doesn't look too good. Rain may have weakened it.
I have no choice, Archie. I have no intention of being drowned in these barbaric surroundings. The bridge, Archie.
Okay, hold on. No, the thing's collapsing under us.
How momentum should serve.
Well, if it doesn't, 37 blondes are going to be wearing black. Correction, 38. I forgot the one in Gimbel's bargain basement. Hey, we made it. The bridge will never be the same, though. There's a car ahead of us in front of the house.
The car from which our dead friend, was thrown. Only one set of car tracks in the mud along the road, and here...
And all we have to do is walk in, ask for the owner of the house, and,
Possibly, and possibly not. Archie, go through the corpse's pockets.
Oh, that's not cricket. Yeah, all right. I'm going through. There's not much on him. Handkerchief, silver, driver's license. The name was, James Miller. Address Garner Lane. Walden. Now, I've got an idea this is Garner Lane, Mr. Wolfe.
In which case, someone named Joe was looking after the house for him, committed theft, and murdered Miller. Miller's body was then dumped on the road in the hopes that the floods would wash the body away. No one at the house seems to have noticed our arrival.
Nope. Well, let's go in and ask for Joe, huh?
Very well. Odd. With the bridge down, there's absolutely no way of getting on or off this place.
Except for a mountain goat. I don't know any mountain goats. I used to know a plain goat once, though.
Indeed.
Yeah, he ran at the 5th at Jamaica.
Stop maundering.
I never maunder. Also, I never win bets on horse races. That's why I continue to work for you.
That is also why you had better ring the doorbell.
Okay. Nobody's going to break a leg rushing to open the door.
I suppose you try it. I have had more than enough of the weather.
Is that polite? Besides, the killer may have some more bullets in that gun.
Are you afraid?
Sure.
Hooey, the door, Archie.
But old Dr. Tidmouse would say... Well, never mind. Hey, somebody was careless leaving the door open like that. On the other hand, has a spider ever shut its web? The answer is no. Are we flies? Yes.
Out of my way, Archie.
There are lights up ahead. Must be the living room.
Excuse me.
Sure. You're excused.
Do you live here, sir?
Do we... No, don't you?
Of course not. This is very strange. I came out to see the people who live here, or the person. I found the door open and no one about. I've been sitting in this corner now for a long time.
Well, it's a pity no one offered you a plum pie. Then you could have stuck in your thumb.
You saw no one enter, sir?
No one at all. I didn't want to go any further. It would have seemed like prying.
Perhaps you had better come along with us.
Well, all right. You know, this place, it has an evil atmosphere.
Certainly has. What it needs is fresh air.
Hooey. This would be the living room door. Ajar a bit.
It is. Looks as pretty as a picture. Oh.
Hello.
Well, just think of it. 5 minutes ago, you know, I didn't know you existed. And you didn't know I existed. And now...
Archie, your existence would have a sudden end unless you keep quiet. Excuse us for intruding, Miss...
Intruding? Oh, but I really should ask you to excuse me.
You do not live here?
I wish I did, but you see, I've been out walking. I live maybe a mile from here, and then when the flood began, I thought I'd come in here and stay for a while.
And you found?
An empty house.
That's not what I found. As old Dr. Tidmouse has often said...
Go through the rest of the house, Archie.
Go through the rest... Yeah, well, never mind. I'll,
What sound?
Somebody's walking. Coming downstairs. I'll go and see.
Hey, you! Come on into the living room. Meet your guests in one or several pieces, as you prefer.
What? Oh. Hiya, folks.
Ah, a host at last.
That's very funny. I think I'll laugh. Ha.
May I ask why?
Because this here ain't my dump. I was just casing the joint. I was just taking a stroll.
Through the house?
I'm eccentric.
Oh, clever. However, I think you'd better stay.
Why?
Because you may turn out to be the owner of this house after all. I rather think introductions are in order.
Well, I'm Peg Shirley.
My name is Wagner.
Joseph Wagner?
Lewis.
How about you, Stroller?
Cregan. Sam Cregan.
Peg, Louis, Sam. Mr. Cregan, while you were strolling upstairs, did you notice anyone else about?
No.
There was no one outside when Archie and I entered. The bridge is down, effectively cutting us off from further visitors. We may assume, therefore, that we are the only people in or about this house.
Yeah, it's cozy, ain't it?
Which further means that one of you three is a murderer.
What's
it you say? The murderer is the person who owns or lives in this house. All three of you denied being that person. Conclusion, one of you is a liar. I hardly expected a full immediate confession. However, we are absolutely isolated here. No one is going to come or leave until we have a killer.
You know, you can't really keep us here.
The flood can and will. Remember, the bridge is no longer. So you see, just the five of us alone. No one else inside the house, no one outside. Therefore...
Correction, Mr. Wolfe.
Maybe it's a branch or something tapping against the door.
Unlikely. Archie.
Okay, I'll go see who or what it is.
Hey.
What?
I got him. Somebody shut the door.
Yeah, all right, I get it.
A disreputable and unwashed gentleman. Head badly hurt. Is he conscious, Archie?
I don't know. He's mumbling something.
Legs pushed off. Fell from the ledge.
He's passed out. I guess he was trying to say that somebody pushed him out on a ledge. On the side of the cliff, maybe. He must have regained consciousness and crawled to the house. Where'll I put him, Mr. Wolfe?
Bedroom, I suppose. We'll need first aid. We can't get a doctor. Cregan, where are the bedrooms?
Yeah, one right up at the head of the stairs. And don't ask me how I happen to know.
We shan't. Archie.
Okay. I'll need somebody to help me carry him up without shaking him too badly.
Cregan?
Okay. Let's go.
As for the rest of you, Mr. Wagner, Miss Shirley, I suggest we return to the living room.
But I don't see any reason why we should take orders from you.
One of you is a murderer. I include Mr. Cregan, of course.
Oh, but that poor man wasn't dead.
Not for lack of trying. However, I was not referring to him.
You mean someone else has been killed?
Precisely. That is why I hope we shall not hear another knocking at the door. It could only be a corpse. Archie.
And Cregan. Yeah.
The injured man?
Still out. Probably got a concussion.
Did he say anything further?
Well, he babbled a bit. I don't know if...
We shall assume we're among friends, Archie. Exactly what did he say?
Well, he was pushed over the edge of the cliff because he saw Miller killed.
Did he also see who?
No. Passed out before he had a chance. He's an old tramp, Mr. Wolfe. He was bumming his way through the country when he saw the murder.
He must have decided on a touch of blackmail and receiving a concussion instead, which may last for hours or for days.
Somebody's playing with the lights.
Some fool.
The switch was over this way. The lights are on again. Whose idea was that?
I had nothing to do with it.
Me neither.
Miss Shirley, why did you scream?
Well, someone brushed against me in the darkness.
You were standing?
Near the table, this table.
Archie?
No, nothing on the table except a bunch of keys on a ring.
Something screwy. Why should a guy put the lights out just to deposit a bunch of keys on the table?
Obvious. Without doubt, those are the keys of this house. Possession of them would have disclosed which of you lives here and which of you therefore killed Miller. It's late. I shall sleep down here, lacking an elevator to transport me upstairs.
The elevator's lacking.
Yes, the rest of you should be able to find bedrooms upstairs. Good night. Archie.
Yeah?
Follow them upstairs. Spend the night awake.
Okay.
Good heavens, Archie.
On my way. What's cooking up here?
Somebody's playing with the lights up
Strike
here,
a match.
You don't have to. I got a flashlight.
Oh, here it is. Light switch. You know, this putting out of lights is getting to be somebody's bad habit. Well, all three of you seem to be okay. Stay here.
Where are you going?
Tramp's room, right here at the head of the stairs. Think of all your good deeds while I'm gone. All right, downstairs again.
What, again?
Oh, dear. What happened?
Well, there was more than a bunch of keys this time.
Oh, that knife. There's blood on it.
There should be. I just pulled it out of a man's heart. Well, Mr. Wolfe, one of these three babies doused the lights, popped into the tramp's room, deposited the knife in his chest, and popped right out again.
The knife you're holding?
Yeah.
Intelligent of you to wrap a handkerchief around the handle.
Well, whoever killed the tramp didn't have time to fool around with gloves, so...
There should be prints on the knife handle. Satisfactory, Archie.
That's mild enthusiasm.
Archie, on that desk, an ink pad.
Yeah.
Miss Shirley, you carry face powder, of course?
Yes, I do.
Archie will need it to bring out the prints on the knife. He will then fingerprint each of you. Compare your prints with those on the knife, and we shall have a murderer to hand over to the police. Archie, will you begin, please?
Here they are, Mr. Wolfe. 3 cards labeled with Miss Shirley's name, Cregan's, and Wagner's. Their respective prints are on each card.
Good. I have the knife here. Several quite distinct prints on it. It should be child's play to, Archie.
Yeah?
Take your own prints and mine.
What?
Do as I say quickly.
Yes, sir. All right, give me your thumb. Thank you. That's it. Now mine. Thank me. That's it.
There's something wrong. Something wrong and deadly loose in this house tonight.
Well, there's a card with your prints and mine.
Thank you.
Now you got 5 cards altogether.
So I have. Archie.
What now?
Take the ink pad and a fresh card with you.
Where am I going with them?
Upstairs?
But, Mr. Wolfe, there's nobody upstairs except the corpse.
Precisely. It is his prints I want.
Oh, this is so ridiculous.
I'm over with.
Tired of
Archie?
Yeah, I got the dead man's prints.
Will all of you please sit?
All right, but it's...
Good heavens, young woman. Be careful. We want no accidents.
Sorry, I caught my high heels in the rug.
Archie, the card with the corpse's prints on it.
Here you are, sir.
Thank you.
You know, I've had quite enough of this nonsense.
Have you, Mr. Wagner?
Yeah, and so have I, Mr. Wolfe. Also, I don't think you know what you're doing.
Perhaps not. However, I have something rather interesting to tell all of you. There is no one in this house besides yourselves, except, of course, for the dead man upstairs. There is no one on the rock on which this house stands, except for another dead man in our car.
Look, we already know all that.
Bear with me. We may rule out secret passages, unusual hiding places, or anything of that esoteric and childish nature. We may also rest assured that no one has come to or left this house or rock within the last few hours.
Well, that means we're kind of hermetically sealed here, huh? Meaning also that whoever was here when the tramp was killed is still here. Still here in this room.
Correct, Archie. Now then, I have checked the dead tramp's prints against those on the knife. Theoretically, suicide was possible. However, the prints do not match.
That guy was in no condition to kill himself anyway.
True. Then I checked Archie's prints and mine against those on the knife. No similarity.
Oh, but no one suspected either of you.
Thank you, but I had to be thorough. That left only the 3 of you. I compared your cards and the prints on them with the prints on the handle of the knife.
And?
I want you to remember one thing very clearly. We are the only living people in this house or on this rock of land. No tricks are possible and may be ruled out.
All right, so what?
This. The prints on the handle of the knife that pierced the heart of the man upstairs do not match his prints or the prints of anyone in this room.
Mine wouldn't match.
Would you mind saying that again?
He doesn't have to. And those cards, Mr. Wolfe, has the prints of everybody here. And yet none of them match the prints on the knife handle.
But, well, in that case, who or what killed him?
Why, there must be someone else in the house.
I give you my word there is not.
Hey, you thinking about ghosts or something?
Ghosts never leave fingerprints.
I've got to get away. I can't stand this.
Me too. Come on, lady.
But I'll come along with you if you don't mind.
Mr. Wolfe.
Let them go. The bridge is down. They can't get far.
Okay. I don't get it.
Get what?
Well, the fingerprint business. And who killed Miller plus the tramp?
The identity of the killer, Archie, is quite obvious.
It is? To who?
To whom?
Who's whom? That's a joke. Yeah, I'm stalling for self-respect. You know?
Of course I do. I have no conclusive proof, however. I had hoped the fingerprints would be of assistance there, but they proved to be phantoms.
I'm still smarting about the other thing. You know, it's at times like this that I almost agree with you about my intelligence.
Lack of intelligence?
Yeah, well, don't rub it in. Don't rub it in. Just go ahead. Yeah, well, maybe you better rub it in. From now on, you may refer to my brain in the negative.
In the negative? Bless you, Archie.
What I've just done, I don't know, but can I have a raise?
No.
I'll take it back.
You can't. Get the others in at once.
Mr. Wolfe, you now have the appearance of Mr. Wolfe being surrounded by several dozen bottles of beer. What have I done?
You've explained the fingerprints, Archie. Hurry. I don't want to keep the killer in suspense.
I don't care. No, I'm very nervous. I don't like this.
Archie.
They're all here.
Yes, but they're all making a noise. Stop them.
Miss Shirley, Mr. Cregan, Mr. Wagner, will you please shut... Mr. Wolfe, they have.
Thank you, Archie. Now then, I have known for some little time which of you killed the tramp and Miller. I lack proof, however.
And you have it now?
I will admit for a while I was flummoxed by the negative evidence of the fingerprints. They seem to indicate that the tramp was murdered by a phantom. However, the word negative itself has solved the minor problem.
Minor to who?
To whom? Never mind. Shh.
Archie, what is the salient feature of a film negative?
Well, I suppose it's the fact that the darks are light and the lights are dark, huh?
Precisely. A reversal, then, of the actual appearances. Now, are there any similarities between filmed images and fingerprints?
Oh, in a way. You could call the whorls and hollows that determine the individual characteristics of a fingerprint the lights and darks, huh?
You could. I shall. Miss Shirley, would you help in an experiment?
Of course.
Thank you. Archie, I want you to take Miss Shirley's fingerprints once again.
Okay. Pad and card. Here you are, Miss Shirley.
All right.
Archie, quick.
Huh?
Grab her arm.
I got it.
Well,
usually I don't have to be coached, but...
Let go of me. What are you trying to do?
Miss Shirley, you already had pressed your fingers on the ink pad once. Why were you about to do it a second time?
Well, I just wanted to make a better impression.
Phooey. Archie, wipe some of the ink off her fingers.
Oh, but then it won't be any good.
It'll be very good, Archie.
I've done it.
And take the print.
No, let go of me.
Maybe. I never hurt women if I can help it, but right now I won't be able to help it. Mr. Wolfe wants your prints all over again, so down on the nice white card.
No.
There, thanks.
Will you let me have that card now, Archie?
Sure.
In the meanwhile, hold on to Miss Shirley.
A pleasure.
Indeed? Would you continue to think so, Archie, if I told you that Miss Shirley's first name is not Peg, but happens to be Josephine, for which the diminutive is Joe?
Glad they're fixing the bridge. I was beginning to think we'd be here forever.
Boy, we have been.
You know, if those black orchids have been holding their breath waiting for you, they're going to be red in the face. Hey, new breed, red orchids, huh?
Archie, must you talk?
Well, it's fun. Also, you've been holding out on me about the case.
I surrender.
Okay. You know, when we compared the new prints of Josephine with those on the knife, you could have knocked me over with a sash weight. They were identical.
Naturally. She stabbed the tramp.
Yeah, but what was the fingerprint gag?
She merely loaded her fingers so heavily with ink that she falsified the markings. She filled up the hollows and walls with ink. The result was that ridges became hollows and vice versa, in the same fashion that a photographic negative falsifies lights and darks.
You got that when I mentioned the word negative. It works, huh?
Try it sometime.
Yeah, the very next bank I robbed. But you said you knew who killed Miller and the tramp even before you exposed the fingerprint gimmick. How?
We knew Miller's murderer lived in this house. Had been stealing from him and so on.
Uh-huh.
Stealing what? Cash, of course. He, as the girl admitted, was an eccentric, kept his money on the property. Cregan had probably heard of it, hence his casing of the house.
Yeah?
Our problem, therefore, was to discover who lived in this house. All three suspects denied it. Josephine Shirley told us, as you may remember, that she'd gone for a walk and then been driven by the flood to this house where we found her.
Well, that's what she said it could have been.
No, because as you may also remember, she tripped at one point over the living room rug and mentioned why.
Sure, she said she was wearing high heels. Uh-oh, because out in the country there are no pavements, so girls don't go for a walk in high-heel shoes. Therefore, she hadn't gone for a walk. Therefore, she was lying. Therefore, she killed Miller and... I should have noticed those heels myself.
You should have, Archie. Your trouble, I suspect, was that you didn't notice the feet for the legs.
You have been listening to The New Adventures of Nero Wolfe, starring Sidney Greenstreet. Tonight's transcribed story was based on the characters created by Rex Stout. This is an Edwin Fadiman program produced and directed by J. Donald Wilson. In the cast were Gerald Moore as Archie Goodwin, and G.G. Pearson, Howard McNear, Tim Graham, and Eddie Fields. Next week at this same time, Nero, Wolfe, and Archie will bring you The Case of the Vanishing Shells. Don Stanley speaking. 3 chimes mean good times on NBC.
Welcome back. Well, I have poked a little fun at what I've often thought was taking Wolfe too often out of the brownstone in this series. But this time I definitely feel it's appropriate. Probably when Wolfe has left the brownstone, more often than not, it's been for something orchid related. He just won't leave on detective business. I did have to kind of wonder about this killer. I suspected the woman in the first place just because the Joe thing would really throw us off the trail. And then when she mentioned the high heels, that definitely struck me as odd. So this was a good case, a lot of fun. And of course I mentioned the black orchids in the opening because Rex Stout actually had a story by that title, was the first collection of 2 stories. So the collection, The Black Orchids, has the black orchids in it, and also Cordially Invited to Meet Death. Well, in my weekly commentary, or a blog post, I should say, I went ahead and compared 3 versions of Murder on the Orient Express. The 2010 version that was done over ITV, the 1974 television version, and the BBC Radio 4 version, which I got off of Audible. Tracy comments, I was very, very disappointed with the Suchet Orient Express. Rather than a complex puzzle about whodunit, which is what the original tale is really about, it's instead Poirot being moody, other characters being annoying, murders being actively evil as opposed to acting out of a sense of thwarted justice. I thought the star power of the Finney film worked in its favor by making the various suspects stand apart more. With a dozen possible murderers, it can be really hard for the movie audience to remember who is who, but nobody mixes up Vanessa Redgrave and Ingrid Bergman. Some good points there. Thanks a lot, Tracy. Finally, we have another tip from Valerie, who writes, I already have the premium site and love it. Thanks for the great detectives and Dragnet. Well, thank you so much, Valerie. I really appreciate everyone's support of the program. We'll be back tomorrow with Let George Do It. Well, before we do get started with today's episode of Let George Do It, I want to encourage you, if you've not already, to check out our book, Tales of the Dim Night. We have reviews and links to purchase as well as book samples over at dimnight.com. Let's get into today's episode now and Let George Do It. The Coward.
Standard of California, on behalf of independent Chevron gas stations and standard stations throughout the West, invites you to Let George Do It. The Coward, another adventure of George Valentine.
Personal notice, danger's my stock and trade. If you're an early worm who keeps getting the bird, you got a job for me, George Valentine. Write full details.
Dear Mr. Valentine, my name is Douglas French. I'm staying in a rooming house, 317 River Street. Mr. Valentine, we can't lose a second in correcting the most fearful, the most horrible mistake ever made by a madman. I knew the man, but very briefly, several years ago. Some way, somehow, in those years between, the pain of his own suffering must have twisted all his remembrance of fact. Because, Mr. Valentine, I hadn't been in this city more than 24 hours when the telegraph office called to read me a wire. It had my name on it, my brand new address. It was from him.
Yes, Mr. French, message follows. It says I have got some new facts. It is never too late for you to suffer as you should. Now I know, and soon the world will know, that I hereby accuse you of cold-bloodedly committing murder for your own cowardly gain. I hereby accuse you of murdering a total of 37 people. Signed, Emil Martinez.
Emil Martinez.
Repeating, for confirmation, 37. That is all, Mr. French.
I'd say we won't attempt to remove it until the x-rays are developed, Lieutenant. You see, in this quarter of the man's chest...
Yeah, Doc, I know. But maybe the pictures will help us until you do get the bullet out.
Near the breastbone, huh?
With the juncture of this rib, you say. Exactly. No, I'd say the difficult part just now is keeping the poor man alive.
Uh-huh. Well, all right, Doc.
Well, why are you so anxious about the bullet, Lieutenant? Do you have a gun to match it with or something?
No, not yet. But when I do find one, well, I want to know what I'm looking for. There's nothing concrete to grab onto in this case.
Except the telegram.
Yeah, that. Emil Martinez. We'll round up every Emil Martinez that ever lived. Only I don't know...
Only it was a little wild, wasn't it? 37 people. Almost a little crazy.
Except that we do have a straight-out attempted murder on our hands.
Couldn't you find anything about Mr. French?
Oh, he comes from the east. They're investigating. They'll let us know, but it doesn't look like anything. No past record. No enemies, if that's what you mean.
I meant friends.
Well, none here in town. At least he didn't see anybody we know of.
And you found him by the river, huh?
Yeah, the walkway on the bridge. Landlady said he had supper, was pretty nervous, went for a walk to kill time until 8 o'clock.
Mm-hmm.
He got it out there in the dark. The noise of traffic on the bridge to cover the shot. A perfect place. Lonesome. Motorists can't see. I guess he'd still be there if one of them hadn't stopped to inspect a flat tire.
Lieutenant, I have the x-ray.
Oh, yeah? Let's see, Doc.
Careful with it, Lieutenant.
Uh-huh. Well, Riley, speaking of flat
Well,
tires...
you said you're not going to measure any caliber or anything off that picture.
For the love of... What is this, a picket fence?
Yes, beautifully clear, you see. I'd say your bullet is this little shadow here under the edge of the rib.
Oh, yeah. I always get a seat behind a pole.
Help us know when we operate later on.
Yeah, later on, huh? Now I gotta sit around waiting to see if he regains consciousness or if he dies.
Sure, Riley. In the meantime, the game goes on, doesn't it?
Huh?
While we're waiting for that pole to be moved, there's somebody running around who's nutty or wild or crazy.
Really, Mr. Valentine, I should be in bed today. Our telegraph company keeps quite adequate records. Worse than the Army. But I've already told the police... Excuse me.
Bless you.
Yeah. Now, look, I know there's a file copy of wires.
Oh, yes. Yes, we sent him a confirming copy after we phoned it. Naturally.
Well, George, they didn't find one on Mr. French or in his room.
Throw it away or burned it, Brooksy. Now, I'm interested in the file copy at the sending point.
For handwriting?
Yeah.
Well, it was telephoned in by Mr. Martinez to one of the stations here in the city.
But when you do that, you have to give your phone number and address for charges, don't you?
Oh, I see what you mean. Yes. We've already investigated. I have it right here. It was a pay station.
Bless you.
Thank you. Do you think penicillin would help?
I think maybe we all should have stood in bed when
I know, it's discouraging. But we handle so much traffic every day, it's very seldom any of them would notice the text. Our girls never react to the millions of words that they... Why? Good heavens. What is it, Miss Johnson?
The message continues. I hereby accuse you of cold-bloodedly committing murder for your own cowardly gain. I hereby accuse you of murdering a total of 37 people. Signed, Emil Martinez. Do you have that, Mr. Onslow? I'll repeat for confirmation. 37. Repeat.
Hey.
George? Was she faint?
I'm just a botanist, you understand, Mr. Valentine, a student, playing Mr. Botany B. I'm not concerned with the world of men.
Mr. Onslow, you were going to say that wire was a mistake, weren't you?
Yes. I suppose a horrible mistake.
That's what Mr. French said about his wire.
I'm a botanist. In the world of botany...
I guess you've seen about Mr. French in the newspapers, haven't you? Yeah, sure. At least from the looks of your study here. All the newspapers.
Yes, Mr. Valentine, I know what happened. But that doesn't mean...
Okay, then why did it happen? Why the wires? Who is Emil Martinez? What's he talking about?
I won't tell you. I'll never as long as I live.
Yes, you will, Buster.
George, wait a minute. Mr. Onslow, do you always tear up your magazines like that?
Huh? What do you mean?
Well, here, in the wastebasket. It's a current copy, too. I never heard of anyone tearing
Get
up.
away from there. Look out, Buster. Put it down. Don't touch it. I'm sorry, Professor.
Oh, George.
Now, you'll be okay, Buster. Now, what do we have to do? Go through the magazine page by page? Or are you going to tell us what it is?
My world is botany. My world is botany. My world is botany.
George, look here. Look where it's folded. 37.
Yeah?
The number, it's here in the article. Freelance writer J.J. Farrell.
Farrell?
Yeah, why?
Never mind. What is it? What does it say?
He's talking about the war. About being in Japan.
Yeah?
In reference to the above, it is of interest to note that Colonel Tsuyamoto's dying remarks to me concern the wiping out of a party of 37 who, with the assistance of native guerrillas, were trying to escape the Holocaust of Singapore. George.
Oh, go on, Angel, go on.
In this case, the efficiency of fifth column informants was belied. Colonel Tsuyamoto stated that the party, which included soldiers as well as civilians, never would have been located had it not been that 4 members of the party itself were foraging for food at night, and that the application of threats finally made one of the 4 confess secretly the exact location of the other 37, who regrettably had to be destroyed. Other examples of fifth column, and so on and so on.
I guess the words in the telegram aren't so crazy after all, are they?
No, Mr. Valentine.
Were you one of the 4, Mr. Onslow?
Yes.
Was Emil Martinez?
I wouldn't remember any names.
Was Douglas French?
I don't... Oh, yes. His picture is in the newspapers. It was the same man, I'm sure.
Who else?
I wouldn't remember any names.
We were all strangers until then. Just a random group of us in a big party with a few British Army men and guerrilla leaders. The others I went foraging with that night, businessmen perhaps. Americans, I know that. I was teaching high school botany in Singapore, Mr. Valentine. Botany.
Now, look. Afterwards, you went through so much together. You were threatened, maybe tortured, weren't you?
We were separated later on, sent to different prison camps, the four of us. Though I never knew just why. They stopped torturing us, Mr. Valentine. Why they didn't go ahead and kill us,
I just can't somehow believe that you wouldn't remember.
The things so simply told in that article. The things so unimportant to the rest of the world. To whom the numbers 37 or 4 don't have such awful meaning. And who would guess that we were still alive, any of us? Perhaps many such events took place during the war.
You don't remember, huh?
It is not a thing simply remembered, Mr. Valentine. Not with sanity. Among that 37 were friends, were our families. But I have another family now, in my work. I am a botanist. I don't remember anything. I am a botanist.
Okay, Mr. Onslow. I'll talk to you later.
Peaceful man.
George.
Well, Angel, there's a guy giving a lecture tomorrow at the downtown club on the Orient.
What?
Mm-hmm. Just ordinary stuff, but the speaker's name is J.J. Farrell.
The writer? Oh, so that's
yes,
why
Angel. Everybody seems to be in town at once, and I wonder why. And if this whole case has turned out to be a chase after a betrayer, an informer, a coward, then I wonder if the writer told all he knew, all the dying chap told him, about which one of the 4 was the coward.
I tell you, I ain't seen Mr. Farrell.
Well, now, look, there's a suitcase. That's his, isn't it? The stickers on it?
What if it is? I ain't noticed him come in. I clean up and dust and bring in the linen once a week. That's all I do. I'm not a snooper like some people a body has to put up with.
Oh, now, please take it easy, won't you? We told you how important it was that we... Huh?
Here's his notebook, too.
Oh.
Yeah. Guess what's on the back page? Scribbled in pencil.
What?
I have some new facts. Hereby accuse you, murder, a total of...
What's this?
Auntie, suppose you go into that bedroom and get rid of that laundry or whatever it is you do.
I told you a body had to put up with things.
George.
Yes, Angel. It's the words from the telegram. The same identical telegram. Signed Emil Martinez.
Oh, what's...
Come on, stay with her, Brooksy.
Okay.
Oh. Is that your tenant, Auntie? Is that the writer? J.J. Farrell?
Yeah, but I didn't see him come in. I've been here all day. I ain't seen him all day.
No, I guess you haven't. He looks like he's been dead since yesterday.
We'll return to tonight's adventure of George Valentine in just a moment. I guess you know it was Mark Twain who said, everyone complains about the weather, but no one does anything about it. But Standard of California keeps a careful watch on the weather and does something about it. So you can get peak performance from your car the year round, and wherever you drive, they see to it that Chevron Supreme gasoline is carefully climate-tailored. Whatever altitude and temperature zone you drive in, Chevron Supreme has been blended to meet the requirements of that zone. And it's further tailored for each different season of the year. So depend on Chevron Supreme gasoline to get the best out of your car. Try a tankful, and you'll notice right away how your car responds. Faster starts, faster pickup in traffic, and smoother ping-free power on hills. In fact, you can't buy a better gasoline for today's high-compression engines. Ask for premium quality Chevron Supreme at independent Chevron gas stations and standard stations, where they say and mean, we take better care of your car. Now back to tonight's adventure of George Valentine. You learn the tragic wartime story of one man out of 4 who betrayed the location of 37 refugees fleeing from fallen Singapore. Well, if you're anything like George Valentine, you'd like to meet the writer who wrote that story, particularly when you see that his notebook contains the words of that same telegram. The only trouble is, the writer's dead.
What did the medical examiner say, Riley?
Oh, same as you. Dead 24 hours, maybe.
Uh-huh. Mm-hmm. And his head's bashed in, crime of passion. There was a fight, a struggle.
Yeah, that's a mouthful of understatement, brother.
Well, what about him? What kind of a guy was he?
Well, I checked with a couple of editors. His reputation's good. Not a chance of his being mixed up with anybody from the Singapore business. And if he had any idea those four were still alive, he's the kind of guy who probably would have kept his mouth shut. Let sleeping dogs lie.
Yeah, but look, Riley, maybe he didn't write all he did know. He couldn't have it. This doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, sense yet. A guy gets a bullet from whom? A guy gets bashed in by whom? It's a killer I want, not a lot of...
I was reading Farrell's notebook, Lieutenant. His notes contains the stories. And it seems to me you're both counting wrong.
What do you mean, Angel?
Well, look, here it says, Emil Martinez, question mark.
What? Give me that.
Now, just wait a minute. And then there's the name Douglas French, and his address back east, and Mr. Onslow. Well, that's only 3, isn't it? But if I turn the page, I can count to 4. Nick Atkins, with a street number, here in town. Here, this is the number.
Yeah, and this is one time I'm going to do the talking. One time... Hey.
Well, that's down the alley.
Down the alley there. Come on, you take it around the left.
Okay. Hey, there's another policeman.
Yeah, guy running ice skip.
Hey, Brooksy, wait.
What?
Those shots were in the alley here, but there's nobody...
George, look, at the house, the side window.
Yeah, broken. The guy was standing out here shooting in it. Come on, side door, Brooksy.
Nick Atkins.
Who else? What?
Yeah, he missed me, didn't he? Couldn't hit fish in a rain barrel that way, the way he shot at me.
Who couldn't?
Don't mind if we get out of this lighted doorway, do you, though?
Yeah, but do you mind telling me who?
How should I know?
Now, look, Buster, my name's Valentine.
Yeah, sure, read the papers, Valentine. Hi, cutie. Miss Brooks, isn't it?
Oh, pretty smart, aren't you?
I get around, I watch what's going on.
Did you get a telegram?
You don't think I'll be left out, do you? Sure. Same stuff, same words. I checked it with Frenchy yesterday.
You saw Douglas French yesterday?
Oh, he gave me a ring to say he was in town from back east, that's all.
Uh-huh. You seen Onslow lately?
No.
Martinez?
No.
What else did French say?
That's all. He sure wasn't elaborate about that wire, though. Yeah, poor guy.
It all strikes you pretty funny, doesn't it, Buster?
You got a better suggestion? How else you going to get this... Take this world unless you laugh at it, huh?
Okay, Atkins, be a smart guy.
Get something straight, mister. There was 37 people. I was boss stevedore of the American docks in Singapore. And I was so smart. I thought my wife would be safer within 37.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. Nick, you're not going to help us very much, are you?
Have it your own way.
Okay, well, there's one thing I'd like to know, though. Did you have any idea back there in 1942 that one of the 4 of you had turned informer? That when they questioned you separately, one of you would have been a coward?
What do you think?
None of you ever guessed how that tragedy came about until you read Farrell's article in the magazine. Otherwise, a certain one of you never would have lasted as long as this.
Stand still, both of you.
Now, take it easy. I know who it is. Come on in, Riley.
There are 3 cops I'm going to demote, and then I'm going to demote myself.
Why, what happened? Did he get away?
Don't even ask me. Well, what's the matter with you?
Relax, Riley. This is Atkins.
Has he told you where Martinez lives yet? Has he told you what he looks like?
Oh, he's telling us nothing, Riley. Nobody is.
Everybody's being so cooperative in this case.
Oh, you can't blame him, Riley. Of course the coward isn't going to talk.
Oh, yeah? Well, we'll see. I'm expecting a phone call any minute.
Oh, did they operate on Mr. French for the bullet? Well, you could compare it with the ones that were fired at Nick Atkins.
No, not that. It's Emile Martinez. The right Emile Martinez.
What are you talking about, Riley?
There, that's the report on him now. Here, you see? People won't tell us, but we find out. Hello, Riley speaking. What? What? Oh, no, Sergeant, you're wrong. You can't be right. All right. The Emile Martinez, who was in Singapore, who was captured and sent alone to a Jap prison camp. A couple of years later, in that same camp, died of sickness.
Well, but the telegram...
Well, that's why the question mark after his name. So that's why
A dead man sends telegrams. Yesterday, a dead man phones a telegraph office.
Now, listen to me, Riley. Somebody signed his name, that's all. Somebody wanted to make everybody sweat. Somebody who'd found out in the article they'd been a coward, but didn't know who it was trying to smoke him out. But that's not important, don't you get me? What I want to do is stop another murder.
Another murder?
Well, who's left out of the four? Who fired those shots at Atkins? Who else could it be?
Get away from me, both of you.
Oh, you came right back to your house, didn't you, Mr. Onslow?
You can't have my gun. You can't have it.
But you've already shot at Atkins, Mr. Onslow.
Well, I missed him. I know I missed him.
But you won't get another chance. We're here now, and you're not going to shoot us.
Stop talking as though I were crazy. I'm not crazy. I'm going to kill him. I'm going to kill him.
There you are. Well, that's better, Professor.
I'm going to kill him no matter what it does to me. No matter what it does to anybody.
Yeah, I know, Mr. Onslow.
I talk about botany. I try to think about botany because I know what a terrible thing killing is. I can't close my mind. I am going to kill him. I'm going to...
Mr. Onslow, be quiet, will you?
Why? Let him spill it.
Too, Riley. We're making too much noise. I told you I wanted to stop a murder, didn't I?
Huh?
Hey, George.
Yeah, Angel.
He's here. I heard the door turn.
Shh. Wait a minute. Here he comes. Come on, Riley, get it.
Take it easy, Bud. Take it easy.
Get off me. I'm not going.
Come on, listen, Riley.
I haven't got a gun. I don't know.
No, take it easy. No, he's clean.
Okay, all right then. I'm sorry we were so rough. But now sit still, don't move.
Why?
You know why.
Hello, Onslow.
Hello, Mr. Atkins.
Well, I guess we can do without the formalities. Just take them both down to headquarters. And we can check on that gun of yours, Onslow, against the bullet in Douglas French.
No.
And you don't have to laugh, Atkins. We'll find a gun of yours someplace.
Take it easy, Riley. I think I'll find the other gun for you.
Where?
French got his bullet on the walkway of a bridge, right by the railing. Okay, get some boys dragging that river fast.
Killer tossed it over, huh? All right. It's worth a chance.
It's worth a lot more than that.
Yeah, well, I'll say it is. Because one of these two guys did it. They're the only ones left. One of these two bashed in that rider and then later on went out and took a pot shot at French. I guess because French and Farrell and everybody else knew he was the coward, that's why.
Riley, will you please? Yeah, it is funny, isn't it, Atkins? Because you came up here to kill Onslow, didn't you?
He's the coward. I don't need a gun. I got no idea what it feels like to know what he did, Mr. Valentine. He's a coward, and I'm going to...
No, you don't. Take it easy now. Now, listen, mister, I want to talk about telegrams. Emile Martinez didn't send them, that's a cinch. And, Mr. Onslow, you didn't even receive your wire until long after Farrell was dead and French had been shot.
Well, what difference?
Therefore, the wires must have been sent by one of you two. Sure. And whichever one it was, you sent one to yourself to cover up.
So what if I did? What does that make me?
Thanks, Atkins. But I don't even care if it was you. The point is the guy who sent those wires did it because he didn't know who the coward was.
What, mister?
So he couldn't have been the coward himself, could he? And on the other hand, Mr. Onslow, if you were the coward, why would you be so anxious to kill a newspaper man you didn't even know?
Huh? Now, wait a minute, Valentine.
This case is all upside down, Riley, because for once the innocent have a tragic motive for wanting to kill. You two guys are at each other's throats because you're the last ones left. Because you jumped to the same conclusions the good lieutenant did. Mr. Valentine, That's pretty easy, Mr. Onslow. I guess there were two guys who knew about the coward. Mr. Farrell and the coward himself, who must have found that Farrell knew the truth and killed him. The same man who walked down on the bridge by the railing and tried to commit suicide. Mr. Douglas French. Where's Valentine, Miss Brooks?
Oh, he'll be right back, Lieutenant.
Well, there it is. There's the bullet.
The doctor said it was right next to his heart.
Yeah, and I guess it'll match up with the gun from the river, all right. The gun we already traced to French. He must have stood by the railing, concentrated on making his dying movements to heave the gun overboard.
Mm-hmm, then pulled the trigger and did it.
Douglas French. Only why? Why did he go to all the trouble? Why did he call Valentine into it?
But think how close to his heart it's always been, Lieutenant. Ever since 1942. Something even more deadly than a bullet. The guilt of knowing what he did. Of being the only one who knew.
I guess so.
And when the article came out, when he killed Mr. Farrell, he must have known it was hopeless. The others would get him sooner or later.
Yes, but why call you people into it?
Well, don't you understand? He wanted to make everyone think accusing him would be a mistake. It was like the way he tried to commit suicide. Trying to make it someone else's fault. Making everything someone else's fault.
Oh, sure. Sure, I get it. Douglas French was a coward all the way to the bitter end, that's all.
George? What are you thinking about, George?
Oh, I don't know, Angel. The things people do to forget things. Laugh at the world like Nick Atkins, or concentrate on work.
Like botany, maybe?
Mm-hmm. Hey, you know, we're pretty lucky, Angel, you and I.
Oh, I know it.
Not having anything big to worry about. Well, we want to forget. All we have to do is...
Oh. Yes, George?
Go out and get something to eat.
Oh.
You've very likely read and heard that RPM motor oil is first choice in the West. And have you ever wondered why this is true? One of the reasons is because compounded RPM stops 80% of wear in your car's engine. This high-cost wear starts the moment you cut the ignition. It's caused by acid-laden moisture forming on cylinder walls and other vital parts and resulting in rust. But not so when you rely on that good premium quality RPM. For special compounds in RPM keep a moisture-proof film on all vital parts in your engine. Even though your car stands idle for days or weeks, corrosive rust can't get started. So to prevent 80% of the wear in your car's engine, depend on RPM, and you'll find the first choice in the West when it comes to motor oils is your choice, too. Ask for RPM motor oil at standard stations and independent Chevron gas stations where they say and mean, we take better care of your car. Next week, when we pick up George Valentine and Brooksy in a small college town, we'll hear George saying...
Now, Doctor, listen carefully. Someone was trying to make you fall, have an accident, kill you. Like someone deliberately took down that beach umbrella this morning, remember?
It might rain today. Registration week, it often rains in the afternoon.
Oh, now, Dr. Adams, look, please, I need your help. You know something. You've got to tell me. You saw something out under the elm trees. Come on, Doctor. What did you see?
Tonight's adventure of George Valentine has been brought to you by Standard of California on behalf of independent Chevron gas stations and Standard stations throughout the West. Robert Bailey is starred as George with Francis Robinson as Brooksy. Wally Mayer appears as Lieutenant Riley. Let George Do It is written by David Victor and Jackson Gillis and directed by Don Clark. Also heard in the cast were Joe Forte as French, Bob Griffin as Onslow, Mark Lawrence as Atkins, Betty Moran as the telegraph girl, and Martha Wentworth as the landlady. The music is composed and presented by Eddie Dunstetter, your announcer, John Heaston. Listen again next week, same time, same station, to Let George Do It. This is the Mutual Don Lee Broadcasting System.
Welcome back. Well, this was, I think, a very surprising episode with the end of the coward and the murderer turning out to be the same person. A lot of twists and a lot of interesting suspects and good, I think, psychological drama going on in this episode as well. Well, we do have one comment on Podcast Alley, just a simple need this podcast. Thanks so much. And I also want to just take a moment and thank everybody so much for all of your support of the program, particularly the tips and donations. Totaled that up and was just really astounded by all the support we've received. So really appreciate that. As we were just getting our taxes ready to go. So, all right, well, that'll do it for now. We will be back tomorrow with Sherlock Holmes. Well, before we do get started, I do want to encourage you to check out Netflix if you haven't. Netflix has a great selection of classic detective shows, many available from Instant Watch, including the ITV Sherlock Holmes show with Jeremy Brett, The Rockford Files, Columbo, Monk, and much more. With more than 90,000 DVD titles and a fantastic collection of Instant Watch, there's something there for everyone, and the plans start at just about $9. $8 with the streaming only. You can get your free trial by going to netflix.greatdetectives.net. But let's go ahead and we'll get into today's episode of Sherlock Holmes, The Adventure of the Grand Old Man.
Kreml Hair Tonic and Kreml Shampoo present the new adventures of Sherlock Holmes, starring Nigel Bruce as Dr. Watson and Tom Conway as Sherlock Holmes. Now it's time to keep that weekly appointment with our good friend and host, Dr. Watson. Let's join him, shall we? Good evening, Dr. Watson.
Good evening, Mr. Bell. As usual, you're punctual to the minute.
Naturally, when I have an appointment with my favorite doctor.
Oh, well, draw up your usual chair and make yourself comfortable.
Thank you.
That's it.
Yeah, all ready with tonight's new Sherlock Holmes adventure, Dr. Watson?
Yes, my boy. I was going over my notes on the case before you arrived. I came across this old theater program. I think it'll interest you.
Garrick Theater, Sir Basil Wentworth in a revival of Martin Reeves' famous play, The Road is Narrow. A production that you and the great Sherlock Holmes attended, I'm sure.
We certainly did, Mr. Bell, though at the time we had no idea that we were about to become involved in the tragic death of Martin Reeves. You've probably heard of him, haven't you, Mr. Bell?
It seems to me I had to read him in school, Dr. Watson.
He's rather out of fashion now, like so many other good things. But in the 1890s, apart from Lord Tennyson, there wasn't a more famous writer in England, or a more respected one. The story I'm going to tell you tonight, Mr. Bell, concerns the horrible circumstances surrounding his death.
Sounds like a mighty intriguing Sherlock Holmes adventure. But before you begin, Dr. Watson, do you mind if I...
You have your little talk? No, of course not, Mr. Bell.
Men, well-groomed hair helps so much in giving a man that prosperous, successful appearance. And I'm sure you'll want to know why Kreml Hair Tonic is preferred among America's top-flight executives. Kreml never plasters the hair down with sticky goo, which makes your hair and scalp feel so dirty. It never gives hair that old-fashioned, greasy, patent leather look. You see, Kreml is a very highly specialized hair tonic.
It contains a unique and utterly different combination of hair grooming ingredients that's never been duplicated in any other hair tonic. That's why Kreml keeps unruly hair so neatly in place longer, with such a handsome, healthy-looking luster. What I especially like about Kreml is that after you use it, you can run your hand back over your hair, and your hair never feels sticky or dirty. No greasy film comes off in your hand. Yet Kreml keeps hair in perfect order from morning till night, always looking so healthy and handsome. Kreml, Kreml Hair Tonic. Now, Dr. Watson, what about the singular death of Martin Reed?
Well, Mr. Bell, that adventure began late on a foggy evening many, many years ago. Sherlock Holmes and I had been to the Garrick Theatre to see the revival of Martin Reed's play, and I remember that we decided to walk home to Baker Street. As we approached the old familiar door of 221B, our footsteps echoed hollowly in the deserted street, and the chimes of a neighboring church reminded us of the fact that it was midnight.
A delightful evening, Watson. A good dinner, an excellent bottle of wine, and 3 hours of theatrical magic.
Well, personally, I found the play rather depressing.
Its theme is a morbid one, but the writing and construction are flawless. Yes, a magnificent play and well worth reviving. By the way, I noticed an item in the Times this morning concerning Martin Reed. He's dangerously ill.
Oh, really? Well, he must be quite an old man.
82, to be precise.
Really, is he as old as that?
Curious career, Watson. His greatest success was written when he was a young man. In the past 50 years, he has never written anything to compare with tonight's play.
No, I don't think it... Holmes, look up at our window.
Hello. The gas is brightly lighted, whereas Mrs. Hudson invariably turns it low when we're out. And look at the silhouette on the blind. There's a man pacing up and down the room.
A visitor at midnight, Holmes. This looks ominous. Be careful now. It may be some sort of trap.
I think not, Watson. If some desperado were lying in wait for me, I doubt whether he'd be stupid enough to turn up the gas to advertise his presence.
Just the same, I wonder how he got in.
Presumably through the front door. Mrs. Hudson has instructions to let a client wait in our rooms if his business seems urgent.
Mr. Sherlock Holmes.
At your service, sir.
I'm Dr. Manners, Harvey Manners.
How do you do, Dr. Manners? This is my colleague, Dr. Watson.
How do you do, Doctor?
I must apologize for being here at such an hour of night, Mr. Holmes, but my business is urgent.
I'm sure it is, Doctor.
I left Carlisle this morning, arriving at St. Pancras Station 2 hours ago. I came directly here, persuaded your housekeeper to let me wait for you.
Then sit down, my dear doctor, and tell me what urgent business has brought you to London.
Thank you. Well, Mr. Holmes, I've been acting in the capacity of personal physician for Martin Reeve, the playwright.
Martin Reeve? What an extraordinary coincidence. We've just returned from seeing the revival of his play, The Road is Narrow. We were talking about him as we walked home.
I understand the grand old man is dying.
He's not in good shape, Mr. Holmes. His heart's in very bad condition. Auricular fibrillation, Dr. Watson.
No, then at his age, I imagine you don't hold out much hope.
No, but I think with care, he might last a year or two. But the reason I've come to you, Mr. Holmes, is that I'm convinced that although he's a dying man, someone is trying to murder him.
To murder him? Good Lord.
What reason do you have for saying that, Dr. Manners?
Well, Mr. Holmes, I've been in almost daily attendance on Mr. Reeve. Last night, his coachman drove over to get me, saying that his master had suffered another bad attack. When I got to the house, I found that Mr. Reeve had received a severe shock. He was in a state of almost complete hysteria, and he kept insisting that he'd seen an apparition in his room a few hours earlier.
What kind of an apparition?
A ghost from his past, as he referred to it. I think that someone arranged for that apparition, that they knew of his heart condition, and also knew that a sudden fright could kill him.
It's possible, Dr. Manners, and it would be one of the least detectable methods of murder.
But who would want to kill a dying man?
Who lives at the house with him, Dr. Manners?
His daughter Catherine, his brother Silas, who's a drunken good-for-nothing, and his secretary, a fellow by the name of Hugh Kingslake.
Do you know the condition of Mr. Reeves's will?
No, but I do know he had dictated a new one a few days ago.
A fact that might easily have provoked a crisis. Dr. Manners, you say that Mr. Reeve spoke of seeing an apparition, a ghost from his past. Was he able to describe its appearance?
Well, he was a little incoherent, but he kept babbling something about blonde hair and blue eyes and a young man who'd come back from beyond the grave to haunt
Well,
him.
don't you think, Dr. Manners, that these might simply be the delusions of an old and a sick man?
I didn't overlook that possibility, I assure you, Dr. Watson, even though Mr. Reeves' mental faculties are remarkably acute for his age. But last night, after I'd given him a sedative, I examined his room. I found these, Mr. Holmes. That's when I decided to come to you.
Oh, let's have a look at them. They look like blonde hair.
Yes, they are, Doctor. I found them on the bedclothes, and yet no one in that house has blonde hair.
Interesting. Very interesting. The hair is human, and yet the roots have minute particles of glue attached to them. Obviously, they're from a wig. Get out the timetable, Watson, will you?
Yeah, we're going to Carlisle?
On the earliest possible train. Though the grand old man of the English theater is dying, we must do everything in our power to see that his death is not an unnatural one.
Mr. Holmes, Dr. Watson, I'm Hugh Kingslake, Mr. Reeves' secretary.
How do you do?
How do you do, sir? Your accommodations at the hotel are satisfactory, I trust, gentlemen?
Entirely,
Yes,
thank you,
we're very
Mr. Kingslake.
comfortable, thank you. Good. Frankly, I'm most relieved that you're here. Mr. Reeves received a severe shock the night before last. I quite agree with Dr. Manners that someone deliberately induced that shock, knowing the serious condition of Mr. Reeves' heart.
Have you any idea who that someone might be?
Well, it's a little difficult for me to talk, Mr. Holmes. After all, I'm only an employee here, but I can't help feeling that... Oh, good morning, Mr. Reeves.
Kingslake, who are all these men?
This is Mr. Sherlock Holmes and Dr. Watson and Mr. Silas Reeve.
How do you do, Mr. Reeve?
And what, may I ask, is the professional meddler Sherlock Holmes doing in my brother's house?
I'm here at the request of Dr. Manners.
Manners has no right to bring you here, sir. A lot of rubbish. All this talk about apparitions. Nonsense. Martin's in his second childhood. He's become a gibbering old fool. Personally, I wish he'd die and have done with it.
Well, upon my soul...
Never mind your soul, my good doctor. Why don't you mind your own business and get out of the house? We don't want detectives here.
Mr. Reeve, I've traveled some 200 miles to see your brother, and I have no intention of leaving this house without talking to him.
Then talk and the devil with you. And if my dear, distinguished brother tells you that I've been sponging on him for years, it's perfectly true.
Uncle Silas.
Enter the beautiful Catherine to try and persuade her drunken old uncle to return to his room.
No, Uncle Silas. I came to get Mr. Holmes and Dr. Watson. Dr. Manners said that Daddy can see them now.
Shall I take them up, Miss Reeve?
No, Mr. Kingslake. I will.
And don't be deceived by the Mr. Kingslake and the Miss Reeves gentlemen. My dear niece and this young man here have a dark secret. A secret that is perfectly apparent to every member of this household.
Uncle Silas.
They're in love. Delightful, isn't it?
Uncle, you're intolerable.
Will you lead the way, Miss Reeve?
Oh, yes, Mr. Holmes.
Don't forget to ask him about the play that made him so famous. You might learn some interesting facts.
I must apologize for Uncle Silas, gentlemen. I'm afraid he's like this all the time these days.
I quite understand, Miss
It
Reeve.
must be very distressing for you, my dear.
Oh, I'm used to it, Doctor. Here's Daddy's room. I won't come in with you. Too many people upset.
Come in.
Please go in, gentlemen. I'll see you later.
Ah, there you are.
Who is it, Manners?
It's Mr. Sherlock Holmes and Dr. Watson, Mr. Reeve.
Ah, good. Good. You can leave us, Manners.
Yes, Mr. Reeve. I'll see you both later.
Very well, Doctor.
Come. Sit on my bed. That's it.
How are you feeling, sir?
Old. Old and ill. But I'm glad you're both here. Manners displayed unusual enterprise in persuading you to visit me. There's been a lot of nonsense printed about my impending death. Anyone would think a great man is dying.
The author of The Road is Narrow is a great man, Mr. Reeve.
He was a great man, Mr. Holmes.
What do you mean, sir?
The author of that play died 45 years ago.
What?
And yet, his ghost appeared in this room 2 nights ago.
Mr. Reeve, are you saying that you didn't write The Road is Narrow?
Yes, my boy, I am. And it's a secret that's been gnawing at me for years. Now that I'm on my deathbed, I'd like to clear my conscience.
Then who did write the play, sir?
A young friend of mine, by the name of Colin McGrath. I started life as a lawyer's clerk in Keswick, a few miles from here. Colin lived in the same village, and we became great friends. One day, he gave me the manuscript of his play to look at, and I realized it was a work of a genius. Suddenly he died. No one knew about the manuscript.
You claimed it as your own, sir?
Yes. To my eternal shame, I did. Now, I want to make amends. Mr. Holmes, I want you to find out if any heirs of Colin McGrath still survive. If they do, I'll give them half of my estate.
Mr. Reeve, does anyone else know of this, fraud?
Yes. Knowing that I hadn't long for this world, I confided the secret to 3 members of my household.
And you're convinced that the apparition you saw the other night was that of the dead Colin McGrath?
There was no mistaking him. The blue eyes, the long golden hair. It was Colin, or his ghost come to haunt me on my deathbed.
This decision on your part to leave half of your estate to any heirs of the man you wronged, was that decision made before you had this strange visitation the other night?
Yes. Yes, it was.
Did you mention it to any member of your family, sir?
No. I did say something to Dr. Manners, and I didn't mention Colin McGrath's name.
It's obvious that someone wished to frighten you, knew your secret, and disguised himself to resemble Colin McGrath.
Yeah, it was Colin. Never forget his blue eyes. He was standing over there in the chest of drawers. He looked at me so reproachfully. So...
You sleep?
Yes, Watson. And while he lies there, some member of this household continues to plot his death. We must work fast.
Well, what are we going to do?
Split forces. I shall remain here for a while and see what may be found out. I'll meet you at our hotel later and we'll compare notes.
And what shall I do?
Go to the village of Keswick. Colin McGrath lived and died there. See what you can find out about him, Watson.
Of course I remember Colin McGrath.
Well, I should be very grateful for any information about him, madam. As postmistress, I imagine that very little village gossip has escaped you.
Of course it hasn't. I remember the McGrath boy well. He was no good. Didn't he marry poor old Mrs. Northrip's granddaughter Susan and then go and desert her just to kill himself? And the poor girl was going to have a baby. No good on earth. That's what young McGrath was. And you can tell him I said so if you ever reach the place I'm sure he went to.
Oh, I said, well, they had a child, you say. What happened to it, madam?
How should I know? I'm only the postmistress. You'd better go and see the vicar, young man.
It's a tragic story you've told me, Dr. Watson.
But you remember Colin McGrath, sir?
Oh, very well. And I always suspected something akin to genius in the boy. But he burned with too hard and gem-like a flame. As Walter Pater has said, he burned himself out, destroyed his life, and poor Susan Northrip's with it. She died of a broken heart less than a year after his death.
And their child?
There was no money, no one to look after the boy. He was sent to an orphanage in Liverpool.
Then that child, if he's still alive, stands to inherit half of Martin Reeve's fortune. If only we can find him. Oh, it's good to be back here at the hotel, Holmes. I've had an exhausting day.
I trust you had better luck than I did. What did you find out?
That Colin McGrath had a child, that his wife died shortly after the child's birth, and that the boy was sent to an orphanage in Liverpool.
In Liverpool? Go on, Watson.
Well, the vicar gave me this photograph, where we are, of Mrs. McGrath. It was It was taken on their wedding day.
Let me see it. But this is amazing, Watson. One of our problems is solved.
Well, I'm blessed if I see how.
Let me explain it to you. After you left, I had quite a long talk with the secretary, Hugh Kingslake. It transpired that he knew nothing of his parents. He had been raised in an orphanage, and the only memento he has is a picture of his mother. A picture that he carries in his watch.
And that picture
is a duplicate of this one.
Great Scott, and the fellow calling himself Hugh Kingsley is really the Colin McGrath heir.
Precisely. A fantastic situation indeed. Come on, old chap. Grab your hat and coat. We must drive over to Mr. Reeves and break the good news that the missing heir is a member of his own household.
But we're still no nearer finding out who's been trying to frighten old Mr. Reeves.
Surely that's obvious now, Watson. Come in. Dr. Manners, what's wrong?
Please come at once, both of you. It's Mr. Reeve.
Hot?
Yes, Dr. Watson. This evening, he had another visit from that apparition. I'm only afraid this time the devilish plan may work and that Martin Reeve won't live through the night.
In a moment, we'll find out what Sherlock Holmes says is obvious. But first, more and more men today are beginning to realize they should take better care of the hair they've got. And when you buy a hair tonic, why not get your money's worth? Why not enjoy the extra advantages of Kreml hair tonic? Kreml contains a special combination of hair grooming ingredients which is found in no other hair tonic. This highly specialized hair tonic keeps dry, stubborn hair neatly in place all day long, and always gives it such a natural, well-groomed appearance, never sticky or greasy. But men, Kreml does lots more than keep hair looking handsome. A quick massage with Kreml stimulates circulation right in the surface of the scalp, leaving your scalp feeling so alive, so invigorated. At the same time, Kreml removes loose dandruff. It's excellent to lubricate a dry scalp. And if your hair is so dry that it breaks and falls when you comb it, remember Kreml actually helps condition the hair, in that it makes it feel softer, more pliable. So men, just as soon as possible, buy a bottle of Kreml at any drug counter. Let Kreml always keep your scalp feeling clean and refreshed, your hair always looking its very best. Kreml, Kreml Hair Tonic. Well, Dr. Watson, this story certainly has me on the edge of my chair. What happened next? You drove over to Mr. Reeves' house, I suppose?
Yes, Mr. Bell, we did. And as we went rattling down the country lanes, the flickering oil lamps on Dr. Manners' carriage lighting a shadowy path, I found it almost impossible to get a word out of Sherlock Holmes. Holmes, sometimes you're the most irritating man on earth.
And what prompts that little tirade, Watson?
You haven't opened your mouth since we left our hotel.
Purposeless conversation is a waste of time. Not much further, is it, Dr. Manners?
No, Mr. Holmes. We're nearly there.
Well, I don't consider conversation purposes when it clarifies the problem, Holmes. You said it was obvious who had been frightening Mr. Reeve. I suppose I'm stupid, but I find it far from obvious.
And yet the facts are clearly in front of your eyes. Eyes. That's it, Watson. Think about eyes.
The blue eyes of the supposed ghost, eh? But the Reeves family have all got brown eyes. Apparently, it's a marked family characteristic.
Quite, Watson. That fact should lead you to the obvious conclusion.
Oh, you're always talking in riddles, Holmes.
Here we are, Mr. Holmes.
And Hugh Kingslake is standing at the front door. How is he, Mr. Kingslake?
Better, Mr. Holmes. Seems to have rallied a bit. But I'm glad you're all here.
I'll drive my carriage round to the stables. Be back in a moment.
Come in, gentlemen. With Mr. Reeves so ill, it may seem a little inappropriate to announce my news. But Catherine consented to marry me tonight. We're engaged.
Oh, really? My congratulations.
Yes, indeed. She's a charming girl.
Oh, Catherine, darling. I've told them our news.
Oh, it must seem a terrible time to announce it, Mr. Holmes, with poor Daddy lying so ill upstairs.
It's quite understandable, Miss Reeve. And before we go up and see your father, I'd like you both to know that we have something in the nature of a wedding present for you.
A wedding present?
Yes. You're both familiar with the story of Colin McGrath, I understand?
You mean that he was the true author of The Road is Narrow?
Oh, yes, Mr. Holmes. Daddy told us all about it.
And did you also know that Mr. Reeve is planning to leave half his estate to the heir of Mr. McGrath?
I knew that, Dr. Watson. In my capacity as secretary, I had occasion to draw up a rough draft of the new will a few days ago.
Then I'm sure, Mr. Kingslake, that you'll be very interested to know that today Dr. Watson and I discovered that you are the son of Colin McGrath.
That I am?
You is the heir? Well, that doesn't seem possible.
The fact is proven beyond a doubt, Miss Reeve.
Then if Mr. Reeve makes the new will, I stand to inherit half the fortune.
Yes, my boy, you do. That's what Mr. Holmes meant when he was talking about wedding presents.
Help! Come here, somebody!
That's Uncle Silas. He's upstairs with Daddy.
What's wrong, Mr. Reeve?
Fire! I knocked over a lamp in Martin's room.
And Daddy's up there.
The room's ablaze.
What?
Come on, Watson.
Well, the whole top landing's burning, Holmes.
Can't go through this way.
We just can't stand here. Mr. Reeve will roast alive. I'm going after him.
Come back, Kingslake.
Come back, come back. Great Scott, he went right through the flames, Holmes.
Send one of the servants for the fire brigade. And tell the rest to bring buckets of water. And to bring them fast.
Dr. Watson, how is Hugh?
Well, he's going to pull through, Miss Reeve. He's badly burned, but he'll be all right, won't he, Dr. Manners?
Yes, a few weeks in the hospital, and he'll be as good as new.
And Father?
Well, I am afraid he's dead, Catherine.
Dead? Oh, poor Daddy.
Oh, my dear, he might have lived for a time, but the shock of the fire coming so close on top of the other one was too much for him. He died just as I took him from your fiancé's arms.
So that by knocking over a lamp, I was responsible for my brother's death?
Yes, Mr. Reeve. The credit is yours. In fact, I wouldn't be at all surprised if the local police might consider booking you on a charge of arson.
Rubbish! It was an accident, and you can't prove otherwise.
Possibly not. But there's one matter I can settle here and now. 2 nights ago, someone in this house tried to murder Martin Reeve by posing as Colin McGrath. The same despicable action was repeated tonight.
Well, one person that we can eliminate is Hugh Kingslake. He nearly gave his life just now, trying to save his employer.
Then who was responsible, Mr. Holmes?
A feature of the impersonation that especially struck your father, Miss Reeve, was the color of the eyes. He described them as a brilliant blue.
Then that rules out Catherine and me. We both have brown eyes.
Precisely, Mr. Reeve. I have devoted some considerable study to the art of disguise. There are wigs and methods of altering height and weight. But the color of the eyes cannot be altered. Watson, 10 minutes ago you had the opportunity of examining Mr. Kingslake's eyes without the tinted glasses he's in the habit of wearing.
Well, they did fall off when he stumbled back down the back stairs, but I can't say that I noticed the color of his eyes.
They were blue, Watson. Brilliant blue, just as his father's were before him.
You mean that young Kingslake was responsible?
Yes, Mr. Reeve, I do.
But that's ridiculous, Mr. Holmes. He just hurt himself severely in trying to save Father.
True, Miss Reeve. But surely his reason was obvious. He intended to marry you. And when he learned a few days ago that your father planned to will half his estate to the McGrath heir, he decided to try and kill him before that will could be put into effect.
Oh, I see it all, Holmes. And then tonight, he realized that he was the heir.
Precisely, Watson. And so it was to his great advantage to see that his employer stayed alive to execute that new will. That accounts for his bravery in the fire tonight.
I can't believe it of him, Mr. Holmes.
I can. I've always disliked you, and I'll have great pleasure in prosecuting him.
It'd be hard to prove, Silas. After all, your brother did die a natural death.
Yes, Dr. Manners. I fear that legally there's very little we can do to Mr. Kingslake. But when he recovers and realizes that he risked his life for nothing, I think he'll find his own punishment. The change in the will was not made. The estate will be divided between the family, and I doubt if Mr. Kingslake will now acquire any of it by marriage.
No, of course he won't. I'll never see him again.
Oh, quite right, my dear, quite right. What a despicable scheme. And to think that his father wrote one of the greatest plays of our century.
I prefer to forget the fact, Watson. Emotional qualities are antagonistic to clear thinking. I assure you that the most winning woman I ever knew was hanged for poisoning 3 little children for their insurance money. And the most repellent man of my acquaintance is a philanthropist who has spent nearly $250,000 upon the London poor. Now, my dear chap, I think we should look up the next train back to London. Our work here is done.
In a moment, we'll hear about next week's story. But first, girls, here's a sensational beauty tip from some of the world's most divinely beautiful girls. Powers models. Girls who are famous for their enchantingly lovely silken sheen hair.
We glamour bathe our hair with Kreml shampoo. And really, ladies, you'll be amazed how Kreml shampoo brings out all your hair's natural sparkling beauty.
It leaves hair shimmering with brilliant highlights that last for days.
And you can always count on Kreml shampoo to thoroughly cleanse your scalp and hair. It never leaves any dull, cloudy film. Then, too, the beneficial oil base helps keep hair from becoming dry and brittle.
That's right. Kreml shampoo leaves your hair so much softer, a silkier hair with satin smoothness. Your hair holds a better wave, too.
So, ladies, buy a bottle of Kreml shampoo at any drug counter and see how easy it is to have naturally lustrous hair, a vision of beauty. Kreml, Kreml shampoo. And remember, a bottle of Kreml hair tonic or a bottle of Kreml shampoo makes a fine addition to that Christmas stocking. Well, Dr. Watson, I won't be seeing you before next Wednesday, so I'd like to wish you a very Merry Christmas.
Oh, thank you very much, Mr. Bell, and the same to you, my boy. I'd also like to take this opportunity of extending the season's greetings to all our listeners and all our friends. On behalf of our sponsors, on behalf of Mr. Conway and myself, and on behalf of Mr. McKnight, our director.
So, Dr. Watson, we'll be meeting again next Saturday night. What new Sherlock Holmes adventure are you planning to tell us then?
The strange story of a weird jungle music that was heard in the peaceful English countryside and of a diabolical plot that failed. I call it The Singular Affair of the White Cockerel.
Tonight's new Sherlock Holmes adventure was suggested by an incident in Sir Arthur Conan Doyle's story, The Sign of Four. Nigel Bruce appeared by permission of California Pictures, Tom Conway through the courtesy of Eagle Lion. Help win the war against tuberculosis. Buy colorful Christmas seals and use them to dress up all your cards and packages. Buy the Christmas seals that help save lives today. This is Joseph Bell speaking for Kreml Hair Tonic and Kreml Shampoo, and inviting you to be with us next week at this same time when Dr. Watson will tell us about the singular affair of the White Cockerel. This is ABC, the American Broadcasting Company.
Welcome back. Well, there were an incredible number of twists in this episode, and some fantastic irony here. That almost, if you took it from another angle, this could be an episode of The Whistler, where a man tries to kill his employer to stop the employer from leaving half the estate to the heirs of a man he wronged, only to find out too late that he is one of those heirs. But a really well-done story here this week. We'll be back next week with another episode of Sherlock Holmes, and join us tomorrow for yours truly, Johnny Dollar. Well, before we do get into today's show, I want to remind you about JohnnyDollarAir.com. I really appreciate it when listeners check out JohnnyDollarAir.com when they're planning their travel. Because, first of all, they get access to a great list of published specials, as well as the ability to name their own price for hotels, rental cars, and airline tickets, as well as cruises. In addition to that, if you do end up making a purchase through JohnnyDollarAir.com, it does help support the great detectives of old-time radio. Well, let's get into today's episode of yours truly, Johnny Dollar. It's the Celia Woodstock matter, or Celia Woodstock matter.
From Hollywood, it's time now for Edmund O'Brien as
Johnny Dollar.
Is this Mr. Dollar, the insurance gentleman?
That's right.
Well, this is Captain Lyle Woodstock. I was given a message that you had telephoned.
Yes, I did. Your insurance company wanted me to look into this trouble with your wife. I wonder when I could see you.
At your convenience, but it's not trouble yet. It's quite possible that nothing is wrong at all.
Oh? I understood you were worried about her disappearance, that you hadn't heard from her in over a week. Isn't that it?
Yes, but, well, I'll explain it all to you. But as I said, in spite of her absence, it's entirely possible that nothing is wrong at all.
All right, Captain Woodstock. I'll be out to talk with you this afternoon.
Edmund O'Brien in another adventure of the man with the action-packed expense account, America's fabulous freelance insurance investigator.
Yours truly, Johnny Dollar. Expense account submitted by Special Investigator Johnny Dollar to Home Office, Washingtonian Life Insurance Company, Hartford, Connecticut. The following is an accounting of expenditures during my investigation of the Celia Woodstock matter. Expense account item 1, $25.50, car rental and mileage to the Woodstock home off the highway just east of Bridgeport. There was a large frame house, shuttered against the cold. Icy landscaping swept down to the shore, where an empty dock stood against the winter wind blowing across Long Island Sound. Captain Lyle Woodstock, please.
Yes, you are Mr. Dollar?
That's right.
Come inside.
Thanks.
I am Captain Woodstock. Nice of you to come out. Nasty wind, isn't it?
Well, it wasn't blowing like this in Hartford.
Quite often windy here in the Sound. I'm afraid you'll have to leave your coat here.
That's fine.
I discharged the servants, all of them. Couldn't stomach their attitudes since Celia's departure. Come along. We'll talk in the library.
How did you happen to turn to your insurance company, Mr. Woodstock?
Yes, it would seem unusual, wouldn't it?
Well, it seems unusual that they would bother with it, unless they thought she'd met with bodily harm. But you told me you don't think so.
After you, Mr. Dollar.
Thanks.
I'm afraid I was guilty of a certain amount of deception when I spoke to Mr.
At the Washingtonian Company? Miller, Sam Miller.
Yes, Mr. Miller. Through a delicate choice of words, I'm afraid I intimated that I was frightened for Celia's very life. Sit down.
Why the deception?
Well, naturally, to interest them in the situation and with a purpose, Mr. Dollar.
Couldn't you afford to hire a private detective?
My good man, I've wasted a considerable amount of money doing just that. It was from the stumbling idiot that I received the news of Celia's disappearance.
He was following her?
He had been for a month, until he lost her. I'd entertained certain suspicions about Celia.
What's this investigator's name?
Slater. Mr. David Slater. He was recommended as the best in Bridgeport. Considering his dismal failure, you surely understand why I felt it necessary to turn to someone else. My insurance company struck me as a wise choice, since there's a large policy on her life.
All right. I'll talk to this later. Now, will you give me everything you can on your wife? Description, so on?
Yes, they're on the table. I brought out a few photos.
Brunette.
Yeah.
How old?
27. That one was snapped on Doctor's Cave Beach on Jamaica. Striking woman, isn't she?
Yeah.
This one was taken while we were anchored off Hilo last summer.
You get around.
Travel has its advantages, Mr. Dollar.
Your boat?
Yes, 64-foot schooner in dry dock at the moment. As a matter of fact, I met Celia because on an impulse, I put into Pia della Cuesta instead of Acapulco. And it seemed that she, too, wanted to travel.
Where do you think she's traveling now?
I haven't the faintest idea. I started to tell you I'd been troubled by certain suspicions. She was seeing entirely too much of a young doctor in Bridgeport. His name is Masterson, Dr. Charles Masterson.
You think he could have had something to do with her disappearance? Is that what you mean?
No, I shouldn't like to say. I believe that she is a quite perfect physical specimen, yet she visited this doctor fellow at least 3 times a week.
Mm-hmm. Anything else?
As a matter of fact, yes. We were in Acapulco 2 years ago.
The rest of the story wasn't too far from typical, although I don't meet too many of the breed. A, the 55-year-old Woodstock, captain because he owned and gave orders on the schooner, had dedicated his life to what he called adventure. And B, the 27-year-old Celia had also dedicated her life to what she called adventure. The results were a number of voyages, and finally, Celia Woodstock's disappearance. Except for the doctor, I didn't learn what had gone on between. I found the private investigator, David Slater, in a conservatively crummy suite of offices on Front Street in Bridgeport.
Well, you've met him, too. You know what type he is.
Yes, I followed his wife. What did you do?
I've got a report on every move she made for a month. You want to see it?
No, not if you remember the highlights. What about this Dr. Charles Masterson?
Doctors are hard to pin down, you know that. She went to his office 3 times a week, but never met him anyplace else. Maybe she was sick.
Her husband says no.
Well, I didn't find out. I couldn't have talked to the doctor without letting out who I was. She had a nurse who quit the day before I left the case.
You didn't talk to her?
I was going to, but after I left, I didn't. Why should I?
Do you know who she is, where I can find her?
Yeah. Her name is Janet Squire. She went to work in a Red Cross blood collection center up on Union.
Good, thanks. Now, what about the day she dropped out of sight? Was Was there anything special?
Sure, there was something special, or I wouldn't have lost her. I'm no rookie in this business. She bought a ticket to New York City on the 3:45. So did I. I got in the same car she did. I didn't see her, but I figured she was powdering her nose or something. Then when she didn't show before the train left, I went through the rest of the cars. But I never picked her up after that.
She knew you were tailing her, huh?
She must have. Must have got on the car and then right off. That and the money she drew out of the bank makes me think she was running out on old Woodstock and nothing else.
No money was mentioned to me.
That's funny. Woodstock knew about it. $2,000 the morning she left.
I wonder what else the old renegade is holding out on me.
The phone call she made?
No, he didn't say anything about any phone calls.
Well, she made quite a few from public booths. I finally got into one next to her. I couldn't get the number, but she talked to somebody named Sprague. Didn't say much but the name and then asked, "Where do you want me to meet you?" When she was answered, she said, "All right, I'll let you know when everything is arranged." And that's all.
Well, that's enough for me. If he thinks he's got a free wife chaser in me, he's mistaken.
You going to drop it?
Sure, if that's the way it is. I gave up that kind of work a long time ago. I don't like it. Sherlock.
Close the door.
What's this? Where's Woodstock?
Close the door. If you do anything else, I'll kill you.
What's happened? Who are you?
Stay away from me.
I smell cordite. You fired a gun. Where's Woodstock?
He's gone. You come this way now. Move down the hallway.
Why?
I'll kill you if you don't. Came in here. Now you've got to do what I tell you or I'll kill you. Come on. You better turn around and look at me. Walk backwards.
You don't even know who I am. You're in trouble. Maybe I can help you.
Never mind that. Hop now. Turn around again. Open the door and get in the closet.
Now, wait a minute.
Please, miss. Please do what I tell you. Won't make any difference if I kill you. Maybe I'd have more of a chance if I did. But I won't if you don't make me.
Okay.
Now, close the door.
I heard him open and close some nearby doors, and shortly after that, the front door closed. Then I started kicking my way out. The paneling was heavy, and it caused a torn trouser leg and a scraped shin before I made it. Mrs. Woodstock? Mrs. Woodstock? Hello? Hello, operator! He'd given himself some more time by pulling out the phone wires, but it took less than 5 minutes for me to cover some 200 yards to the nearest neighbor, explain myself, and get through to the Bridgeport police. A short time after that, I met Homicide Lieutenant Al Jester, and with him watched 2 ambulance attendants start Mrs. Woodstock toward the hospital.
What's the condition, boys? Can you tell?
It's bad, Lieutenant. Her right lung.
No chance of a statement?
We'll do what we can, Lieutenant.
Well, I guess it depends on her, how hard or easy this thing is going to be.
Yeah, but better not count on it. I've been disappointed too often. What else did Slater tell you?
Oh, that's about all. She'd drawn $2,000 the day he lost her on the train. He said he'd heard her talking on the phone to somebody named Sprague about where to meet him and about some arrangements of some kind. Now, what about Slater? Is he clean?
Well, if he isn't, he's careful and he stays out of trouble. I guess the worst thing I can say about him is that he does a lot of divorce snooping. Why?
I just wondered. I had no reason not to believe his story. He said as far as he was concerned, the girl was running out on her husband. The more I saw of it, the more it looked that way to me, too. And I came out here to drop the case, and it blew up in my face.
The man he described, could he have been this Sprague?
Well, he could have. I didn't ask him. He was half crazy. If he was Sprague and I'd thrown the name at him, I'm afraid he'd have killed me. He was that bad.
Can you describe the gun?
Yeah. Cheap revolver, nickel-plated, short barrel, 32 caliber.
You sure of that?
Well, I guess a smart lawyer could keep me from swearing it was a 32, but it was.
I'll take that.
I got only one definite thing out of him. He said Woodstock was gone. That's all he'd say. Then he put me in the closet. I didn't hear him drive away. I was kicking up some noise getting through that door. But the people in the house where I phoned said they saw it leave. The next house that way.
Sergeant.
Yeah,
Next house towards town. People saw a car leave. Send a man over and get what you can on it, will you?
Yeah, all right.
Said they didn't hear any shooting.
You didn't see a car when you got here?
No, it must have been parked on the other side of the house.
Then I'll get it roped off.
Yeah.
Snow ought to hold some good prints off the tires. Did I get the amount of the insurance on the victim right? $100,000?
Lieutenant Jester.
Yeah?
You better go upstairs. They were shooting up there, too.
Oh, where?
In the hallway, toward the back. Garrett says there's a man lying sort of half into a room, but there's no question about it. This one, he's dead.
We will return you to the second act of yours truly, Johnny Dollar, in just a moment. Have you heard the new Sing It Again, the new comedy with Jan Murray as your host on the Coast to Coast phone? The new cash prizes for cracking the mystery of Sing It Again's phantom voice. The new speed and color of the tuneful little riddle songs that make Sing It Again a Saturday night must for radio listening. Be listening for Sing It Again tonight on most of these same CBS stations. Now, with our star Edmund O'Brien, we return you to the second act of yours truly, Johnny Dollar.
A little gloomy, Lieutenant, but I don't want to handle any of the light switches. Right back there.
Oh, yeah. I see. Woodstock. Let me see. Huh? So it is.
And get some light on in the room. The shutter's all closed. Push the switch for something that won't hurt Prince.
Yes, sir. Car key ought to do it.
Shot from behind.
Here's a gun on the floor, Lieutenant.
That guy told you Woodstock had gone, Dollar.
He couldn't have been more right, could he?
Oh, I guess not. Well, let's get out of here until the photographers show up.
Neither the photographers nor the fingerprint men, nor a thorough search of the house, resulted in any progress. By the end of that first day, the description of the man I'd tangled with had been broadcast, along with a possible description of the car he was driving. The police had also put out a futile search on the single name Sprague. And Celia Woodstock hadn't died, but she hadn't regained consciousness either, or shown any signs of recovery. I took a hotel room in Bridgeport that night where I'd be called if and when anything happened. Nothing did. The next morning, I went to the Red Cross Blood Collection Center to talk with a nurse who had recently resigned the office of Celia Woodstock's friend and/or doctor. I'd come in with my mind tossing motives for murder around, motives of personal greed and selfishness and hate. And it was almost a shock to suddenly face a segment of this country, citizens, old ones, young ones, men and women, quietly going about the business of helping the best way they knew how. I stayed to give my own blood after Janet Squire talked with me, and I knew it would go overseas in the best of company.
We can go in here, Mr. Dollar.
Thank you. I'm sorry to bother you, Miss Squire, but I was told that you were in Dr. Charles Masterson's office until a short time ago.
Yes, that's right.
Have you seen the morning papers?
No. Why do you ask?
Mrs. Lyle Woodstock was shot last evening.
Mrs. Woodstock? Oh, she's one of Dr. Masterson's patients. Was she seriously injured?
They don't know if she'll live. Her husband was killed at the same time.
How dreadful. What happened?
I don't know. I'm working with the police on it. I'd like to learn as much as I can about Mrs. Woodstock.
Well, I'm afraid I know very little. She was a patient, but other than that, I know nothing.
Her husband seemed to have the idea that she might be more than just a patient.
That there might have been romantic interest between them.
Uh-huh. Was there?
Well, not that I know of. I make it a point to do very little prying into other people's affairs, Mr. Dollar.
Mm-hmm. Sometimes I wish I could. Do you know anything about anyone named Sprague?
Sprague? No, I'm afraid I don't. I'm sorry.
So am I. I hope the results are better when you start working on me.
I am sorry, Mr. Dollar. If you'll step right through there, Miss File will take care of you.
A telephone check with Lieutenant Jester about an hour later added nothing. He'd been in communication with Mexican authorities, but they were unable to come up with any leads on Celia Woodstock, or even proof that she'd been in the Acapulco vicinity 2 years ago when Woodstock had told me he'd married her. Homicide men were searching the captain's schooner, and they were still working on the name Sprague. I played my last card and went to see Dr. Masterson.
But, Mr. Dollar, I'm sure you realize why my name mustn't be dragged into it.
It won't be if it doesn't belong there, Doctor.
There was absolutely no basis for his suspicions. Whatever made him say anything like that?
He had a detective following her. He had an idea she came to your office too often.
Then why didn't he talk to her?
He did. He said something about a sinus condition and heat treatment.
That's precisely the truth. I resent your attitude, Mr. Dollar.
That puts us on a par. Your attitude doesn't set so well with me. Keeping your name out of this case isn't as important as clearing it up, no matter what you think.
But I know nothing about it.
You must have talked to the woman. As often as she was here, you must have become fairly well acquainted.
Better acquainted than with most of my patients.
Well, I don't ask for any more. What did she talk about?
Why, the conversations were unimportant. Talked about her travels. They'd come here from Florida to have some work done on their yacht.
She talk about her husband?
Yes, occasionally. General things.
Like what?
I realized that he was much older than she was, but that she was quite satisfied with their marriage and their life together. That's what makes his suspicions of me so ridiculous. She was happy with him.
Never anything about unhappiness, about leaving him?
No, they were planning on a trip to South America in a few months.
Dr. Masterson, did she ever mention anyone named Sprague?
Sprague?
Yeah, Sprague.
This is one of the strangest things that's happened to me in a long time.
Why?
She went to pieces because of that name. Completely and helplessly to pieces. Just before she stopped coming for treatment.
What happened?
The last visit she made, the afternoon about a week ago. Someone telephoned and asked for a Mrs. Emil Sprague. My nurse and receptionist called in and asked if Mrs. Sprague could answer the phone.
Was the nurse Miss Squire?
No, she'd just left me. It was Miss Hall, who didn't know my patients by name. But when Mrs. Woodstock heard the name Sprague, she went into hysterics. I gave her a sedative. When she was calmed, I wanted to ask her about what had happened. But, well, I didn't. There was something about her that begged me not to. I decided to wait until she came back. But she never did.
Well, it's Emil Sprague now.
I'm sorry I was hesitant, Mr. Dollar.
Well, it's in the works now. We'll see what we can make out of it. How's Mrs. Woodstock?
Still alive. His chest wounds are bad, though. Now, here's how the shooting stacks up so far. She was wounded by 38 caliber slugs. Her husband was killed by 32s. So if you were right on your gun description, the man you ran into killed the husband.
What does that leave? Woodstock killing his wife?
He was shot from behind while he was going into the upstairs room. Apparently chased up there. He had a gun in his hand, and he dropped when he was hit. That was the gun we found on the floor. 38 caliber.
Ballistics hasn't run any comparison tests yet?
No.
I won't buy the theory. Mr. and Mrs. Woodstock seem to have been pretty happy. What about their schooner?
Well, I talked to my men on the phone. Nothing yet. Crewmen are all available and with alibis. But what's all that got to do with somebody named Mrs. Emil Sprague?
I couldn't answer him. Nobody could. But close to 12 that night, the lieutenant phoned me that Mrs. Woodstock was finally responding to treatment and would likely live. I was at the hospital at 12:30, but it wasn't until almost 3 that Lieutenant Jester and I were told that she was conscious and able to answer some questions.
Good morning, Miss Woodstock. Feeling better? My name is Lieutenant Jester. This is Mr. Dollar.
Hello, Mrs. Woodstock.
We're both interested in what happened at your house the other evening.
Mrs. Woodstock, do you understand what we're saying to you? Do you understand?
My husband smiled. They told me he was all right. Is he?
Yes, Mrs. Woodstock.
He was shot. They tell you that?
Yes.
You know who did it?
Yes, I know. I was there. I remember.
We wish you'd tell us, Mrs. Woodstock.
Emil Sprague?
Yes. Yes, Emil. No one else was there. He made me go.
Made you go where?
To my house. To talk to my husband.
Emil Sprague made you go? Why?
How could he make you go?
Because I'm Mrs. Emil.
You're Mrs. Emil Sprague?
Yes. And I hate him.
But you were married to Mr. Woodstock.
I shouldn't have.
I think I understand. You were married to Sprague. Your marriage to him was never ended, but you married Woodstock anyway.
Yes.
I was wrong. I lied. I didn't tell him. And then it was money. He wanted money.
Sprague.
Yes. I didn't know where he was. Mexico. I had to get away. And I married my husband. That's all that matters.
I'm afraid it isn't. Sprague followed you here.
From Florida. I begged him not to.
The $2,000 you drew from your bank?
I gave it to him.
Mm-hmm.
But it wasn't enough. He made me stay with him. And made me go with him for some more money. And my husband, I tried to make him understand and he wouldn't. He blamed me and called me things. He went to the drawer. Oh, why didn't he shoot Amos instead of me?
Are you sure of that? Woodstock shot you?
Going to the drawer. I remember. Turning around with a gun. And that's all.
Do you know where Sprague would go?
What happened? Why did he? What did my husband say?
He hasn't said anything. Evidently, Sprague chased him upstairs, shot him there, and left. Do you know where he'd go?
Back to Florida.
No, we don't think so. We got a good description of him and the car he was driving. We think he's still in Bridgeport someplace. You said you were with him. Where?
He had a room on Commercial Street. 713.
Rooming house?
No, it's a big building. There's apartments.
Which one is Sprague?
It's, number 12 on the second floor.
Do you have a phone in the room?
Yes. Pleasant 2132.
Well, thank you. We won't bother you anymore. Thank you, Mrs. Woodstock.
I want to help my husband. I'll do anything I can. I want him to know that.
We'll tell him, Mrs. Woodstock. It's a little after 3. The produce trucks are going to be rolling on Commercial Street before long. Think Sprague will give us trouble? Yeah. If he's been holed up since the shooting, I think he's probably father of us, not the one I saw him. We might slip on him this time in the morning. I'll get some men started out there. You better come with me. Sure. I'll need you to identify.
Lieutenant. Men should be set in the back of the building.
All right, Sergeant. You'll go in with me. Don and I took a look at the floor. It's that corner one up there. There's a door to another room right across from his, so we want to keep him from firing if we can. We didn't warn anybody because we want to keep it quiet.
Hope it stays that way.
All right, Sergeant. Let's go across. Good luck. Lieutenant, the window. He's onto it. We better go on across. He's onto it. I've been watching at the window. I saw him move. Well, you better see what you can do on the phone then, Don.
The phone?
We thought if you couldn't catch him off guard, we'd try and talk him out. There's a payphone in the hallway. His room's just to the right at the top of the stairs there.
That phone's right in line from up there.
And we'll cover him. Okay, Dollar, if you're ready. He won't answer.
It's ringing. I can hear it upstairs.
He'll do something with it. Hello? Hello, Sprague?
Yeah?
We just got a complete statement from Mrs. Woodstock. You blackmailed the works.
She's alive?
Yeah, and she's going to make it.
I thought she was dead. I saw her fall. I killed him because I thought she was dead. If I'd known, I wouldn't have killed him. I should have found out.
You should have done a lot of things. What we want you to do right now is to give yourself up without any trouble. Every door in the building is covered by police. You won't get out if you try. We want you to come out of your room and down the stairs with your hands out where we can see them. You understand that? Are you listening to me? Come on, Sprague. Come on out and make it...
Stairs, look out. Get down, Dollar. Stay there, Sergeant. Be careful, Dollar.
It's all right. Sprague? He's dead, Lieutenant. Sergeant.
Yes, sir?
I'll go phone in. Keep the people away as best you can.
Okay.
Expense account item 2, $45, miscellaneous, hotel, meals, etc. Expense account total, $73.60. Remarks? I understand the lawyers for the Woodstock estate are already measuring ways and means to cut the bigamous wife out of the estate. I don't think the Washingtonian Company has a chance of doing the same with the insurance money. Yours truly, Johnny Dollar.
Yours truly, Johnny Dollar, stars Edmund O'Brien in the title role and is written by Gil Dowd with music by Wilbur Hatch. Edmund O'Brien's latest picture is a Paramount Picture production, The Redhead and the Cowboy. Featured in tonight's cast were Francis X. Bushman, Jim Nusser, Ted Osborne, Lorraine Tuttle, Bill Johnstone, Tudor Owen, and Ray Hartman. Yours truly, Johnny Dollar, is produced and directed by Jaime Del Valle. This is Dick Cutting inviting you to join us next week at this time when Edmund O'Brien returns as...
Yours truly, Johnny Dollar.
There's a very charming, very amusing young couple to be found at CBS, the Star's Address, every Saturday evening. And you're invited to stop by and call on them. They're Liz and George Cooper, and Liz is played by the lovely red-haired Hollywood comedian Lucille Ball. Liz is nice and easygoing. When trouble's ahead, Liz goes for it easily. It's wonderfully hilarious. It's My Favorite Husband, starring Lucille Ball, every Saturday evening on most of these same CBS stations. Stay tuned now for Von Monroe's Caravan, which follows immediately over most of these same CBS stations. This is CBS, where you laugh at Jack Benny every Sunday night, the Columbia Broadcasting System.
Welcome back. You know, I liked how they worked in the little plug for giving blood to the Red Cross. And it says something, I guess, about Johnny Dollar. You don't see detectives usually stop in the middle of their case to give blood. But, of course, this was as buildup was going on towards the Korean War, and a lot of concerns with that, and the idea that the blood would be sent overseas. So, very interesting message in here. These cases are always kind of interesting when Johnny basically gets made honorary policeman and is given police tasks. You have to wonder, were departments across the country short, or do they just want to keep Johnny in on the action? The writers, that is. Well, I've listened to and evaluated another radio program, Mr. Keene, the Tracer of Lost Persons, and I actually thought it was an okay show. It's certainly not Johnny Dollar or Let George Do It, but the mysteries were pretty good on at least 3 of the 4 episodes I listened to. A little touch of melodrama, but not enough to ruin it, though there is some moments of unintentional hilarity I'm sure we'll get to highlight. And it's, of course, always would be hard to say no to a show that ran on the radio for perhaps longer than any other detective show. So that's added to the list of shows that we may someday do. Finally, we got a nice, great show comment on Podcast Alley. And that'll actually do it for today. We'll be back tomorrow. Or actually, no, we won't. We'll be back Monday with The Adventures of the Abbotts. And Sunday with The Mystery of Mr. Wong. Send your comments to box13@greatdetectives.net. Remember, you can follow us on Twitter at Radio Detectives. And once a month, please cast your vote for the show on Podcast Alley. podcastalley.greatdetectives.net. From Boise, Idaho, this is your host, Adam Graham, signing off.